Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
The Yankees 3, the Dodgers 2. The bases are loaded, 2 out, bottom of the 10th inning. The scenario you dream about, Freddie is living. First pitch swinging, high fly ball, hit deep, back, and gone! Freddie Freeman channeling his inner Kirk Gibson. A walk-off home run in Game 1 of the World Series. A walk-off grand slam.
Play action. Back to throws. Howard steps, throws, passes, intercepted. Malcolm Hartzog with a pick at the 40, 35, weaving his way to the 30, 25,
Let's
20,
go, baby.
15, 10, down to the 5-yard line out of bounds. Malcolm Hartzog's 4th pick of the year, and the Huskers have it first and goal. Dell's the back. Huskers break the huddle. Under center goes Raiola. Huskers go quick, turn, give it off to Dante, right side, leans, dives, touchdown, Nebraska. Dante Dowdell puts the Big Red in front, 15-14.
But make no mistake, the hardest thing is building a culture of championship caliber expectations without winning. There's a lot of guys that have taken a lot of jobs that are already winning and they keep it going. I should probably try that sometime. But this to me is why the Lord put me on this earth. Like to work with young people and to have them raise their expectations. And it's why these guys are here. I mean, that's Dylan, Jacory, they could have gone somewhere where they were already winning. They came here to build it. So I'm proud of them. And I say all this because I hope fans are disappointed, but I hope they're proud of them. Now, if we don't do it again next week, Mitch, to your point, if we go out there next week and we're front runners again, then it was all for naught. Like this is a step, and it has to be where we are now, that we play this way every week.
Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What is going on, DB?
What's going on, man? How we doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I'm in a good mood this morning.
Are you?
Yeah. Why, did I seem cranky?
I'm so used to the thing. I'm so used to the broadcast. I'm fixing my mic to make sure the mouth part is where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I don't have to hear the great Josh Hilkeman say, off mic, off mic, off mic. Or my man Benny Mack give me the
turn it up. No, it was a good sports weekend.
Yeah, it really, really was. It started on Friday.
Really Thursday for you guys.
Yeah, was that Thursday?
Well, your West Side game was Thursday.
Yeah, that was cool. I talked to a couple of people from Papio on my way to the airport Friday, so that was good. Kind of enlightening. And then like Friday night, I didn't know if I didn't realize this was like the mean streets of Columbus.
What do you mean?
So we got a great producer. We'll just call him Mick. He was Nebraska Public Media down there. So he's kind of doing Gavin Felix's old job. And for everybody that knows Gavin is like this quiet, very nuanced. He's just great. He's just great. He's just a really button-up person.
Yeah. And
I've told you about Mick. Mick is kind of a throwback. There's no question that like Mick grew up in the 70s. Like grew up. And he snacked on danger and he died.
Formed by the 70s.
He snacked on danger and he dined on death, right? So, I mean, he wears like throwback Ohio jerseys in Cleveland. And his shoe, he always has like sweet tennis shoes. He's polar opposites from the G-Man. So he's like, hey, it's my stomping grounds and I get you in Hyde Park. Grab a steak. I said, I'm kind of quiet. Don't waste it on me. I'll be by myself. He's like, no, go, DB, go. So we're taking the bus over, and so I text him. It's like 4:15, so 3:15 your time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, shoot. I'm like, Dodgers are on at 8.
Yeah.
The actual real people that do the work on the radio broadcasts are gonna go set up. So once Sharp stayed at the hotel. He didn't go over to the stadium. So Jess, Ben, and Sam and Alex went, and I was like, Am I gonna feel guilty not going to help set up? So they were leaving right as I was getting ready to leave, but I had to go to CBS. I wanted to go to CBS because I forgot a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
So they went, and I caught a lift to go get something to eat. So we're driving over, and the guy, and I'm texting back and forth with Mick, and he's like, hey, I can get you in at 5:15. Ask for my girl RHI. And I said, is that pronounced Ree or Rye? He said, Rye is in bread. So I was like, oh, okay. He goes, hey, it's okay to walk as long as it's daylight, but at nighttime, make sure you get a ride.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn. So I get in the lift, and I'm talking to my man, and he's talking about how he moved out to this brother. He's big brother, cooler than a fan. We were talking about being mislabeled, like based on your appearance. I was like, yeah, man, sometimes I get that. Like, people hear me, and then they're like, oh, that's what you look like. And so we were just joking back and forth. He's a big guy. He's like, man, all these people used to go to my parents' house, and, why isn't he wrestling, and why isn't he playing football? He's like, man, I couldn't play dead. So he's just funny. And so we get there, and he goes, hey, you going to be solo? Now, keep in mind, it's 5:15.
Yeah.
It's 5:15, man. It's broad daylight, man. It's dinner time. He's like, hey, you going to be by yourself? I said, yeah. I said, I'm going to eat by myself. He said, I'll give you three pieces of advice. He said, if you're going to have a drink, get it out of a bottle. Don't walk around with an open container. Sometimes people wind up by the river here lately. I was like, ooh, okay. I said, well, what's number 2?
I was going to say, that's how a lead off.
He said, if you call a Lyft and they call you back pretending not to be able to speak English, get a different driver.
Okay.
I was like, okay. And the other thing he said, just make sure don't walk and drink alone. It almost killed my appetite.
I was going to say, I'd be like, hey, you should take me back to the hotel.
I thought about it, but I didn't want to let my man Mick down.
I feel like Mick let you down in that situation.
No, Mick is the GOAT. He had I can't say it on air, but man, he had one of the greatest lines ever. He texted me. I got back to the hotel about 7.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm ready for game time. And he said, hey, the ladies loved you. They said you took good care of them. And I said, man, I didn't realize how many people there love them some Mick.
Yeah.
And he's like, it ain't me they love. I was like, oh, that's how you get down. I'm like, all right. But, it was funny.
Yeah.
Older guy.
Yeah.
And clearly very popular. And then I buckled in for the playoffs. You guys were texting. I was getting.
I sent one text. One text.
No, timeout, though. These went on till like 12:30 my time.
Yeah. After people text you after the game.
And I could appreciate it because I had to celebrate. I ran circles in my room by myself. I've
been there.
And every time I was like, ooh, was that too loud? I was like, yeah. Like, I'm lucky I have any molars at all because I had to grind this thing. Yeah. It was incredible.
Yeah.
So then I just went down memory lane.
Yeah.
On, with the old Buck cuts and then them playing, not Buck, but Scully and them playing the overlays and
all the Kirk Gibson highlights and the whole deal.
Before you know it, it's like 5:30.
And you got a job to do pretty soon.
Yeah, man. And A-Train and Green Eggs and Ham, Sam I Am, they weren't as jovial on the lift ride.
Mm.
So it was kind of ominous. But Jess was her typical Jess. So
sure.
She's like, morning. But the guy didn't speak great English. So he killed the vibe.
Yeah.
And the walk to the stadium was super far.
Really?
So I'm getting ready to get in my grumble pants. And Jess looked over her shoulder, and she's like, just get your steps in, DB. I don't want to hear it. So that kind of set the tone, right?
Hey, no nonsense.
Yep, me, Alex, and
business trip.
And Sam were kind of just mumbling under our breaths because they actually have equipment.
Yeah.
I got a duffel bag and a backpack, man. Why am I crying? And the whole vibe from there on out was business.
Yeah.
It just... I said to a couple of the people inside, it's one of the few places that will go for travel, and their lore and mystique is equal to or greater than Nebraska.
Sure. Yeah.
You could definitely tell that there's a way that they expected to do business.
Mm-hmm. Even the way everything kind of looks.
Oh yeah, it looked a lot. It reminded me of Memorial Stadium.
Yeah,
the setup for media was great. The food was, from what I hear, great. They had a different setup for the Fox crew that looked spectacular. I'm like, oh shoot, this is big time.
Yeah, they kind of get after it.
Yeah, and it was the most time I spent down on the field before the game too. So it was. And Avery asked me too. She texted right before, like, I don't know, it was a little before the game. She goes, "What's the vibe down there?"
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of other guys, Sip asked me the same thing, and so did one of our local guys. And I said, "It's confident." Like I said, it's surprisingly confident.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Robin Washut, I said, "I wish I knew what that meant."
Yeah.
Right. I go, I feel like I'm like, I wish I knew kind of what that's going to be worth.
Yeah, what that translates to.
But I did. By the way, I got to grab Robin this week, Shane. I told him we'd be talking to him. And so then the game happened. But there were lots of little telltale signs.
Mm-hmm.
I had an unforgettable, at least for me, because of and when I say his name, you'll know how I feel about him. But it was very buttoned up. So Jess is trying to be professional, and she's got her little setup down there by the bench, and they kept kind of like low key threatening her, like move and don't put your stuff here, and you can't do this. And
mm-hmm.
I was standing with one of our admin assistants, and we were getting ready to shoot this on the field piece, and security comes over. Now keep in mind we're in front of our bench.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, can you guys get off the field?" I'm like, ain't nobody even out here. Like, really?
Yeah.
So I'm childish. I stood on the sidelines, and I didn't move. So my back is to him, and we're still talking about, like, it's nice, crisp deal, the overcast shadows, the turf, like the ambiance. They were playing really good music. So far I would rate Madison and then Columbus in terms of pregame music vibe. Like, they're 1-2. And lo and behold, like, here comes Ohio State. So they walk from the far tunnel to the tunnel where we were. So apparently they come through the middle of the field, or through the field, and towards the sideline. And there's this group of fans in the corner that they all go and they high five. And I'm like, you wanted me to get out of the way for that? Like, I'm not even in their way. Like, they just go right on by, man. Like, my back is to you. I'm not even bothering anybody.
Yeah.
But Jamari Butler was stretching, and he, like, if you see him, like, he's very recognizable, right? I mean, so we're just kind of chopping it up, and I mentioned it briefly on air during the broadcast, but the things that he said was kind of a microcosm of not only how I want to do life, but how I think I want that team to do life. Because it started out with just some simple, like, man, good morning. I say good morning to him. He's like, man, appreciate you guys being here. He asked about Greg specifically. He was like, man, it was good to see your partner make the trip. So that had me feeling a certain kind of way, right? I was like, yeah, man, like, for sure.
Yeah.
Jess has obviously done 100 interviews, or 10 interviews with him, so she really likes his personality too. And I said, so then I was hooked. I'm like, man, this dude's trying to stress, but he's talking to me, so I'm just gonna go ahead and keep talking.
Yeah.
And I said, man, it is good to see you healthy and moving around. And he said, not every day. How do you say? He said, not every day is going to be the way that you want it to go, but you have to attack it the same. I said, oh, shoot, this dude's hitting me with ruleisms already.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm further all in. And I said, hey, man, go have a day. And he was like, man, it's my band of brothers. Like, we didn't like the way last week went. Like, we got to get it in. So then my heart's like super melted. I'm like, oh, my dude. So I give him a big hug. He gives me a big hug, and it was like game on.
Yeah.
So then I took my little narrow behind, and only thing I cared about was watching. I just watched Dylan warm up because he does the same routine every week. He's always early. There's probably, 25 guys that come out there. And I walked upstairs. I told Benny Mac, I said, man, Dylan looks good. He's moving well. I liked his footwork. He was stretching. There was nothing ginger about him. Like, I felt like
when we saw him move
I was
a lot.
Yeah. And I wanted to see him I wanted to see his ritual.
Yeah.
So then on the way up, I talked to his dad because there were only this is a late arriving crowd.
Yeah.
Only a handful of people over there.
Well, you got to get your tailgating in before the 11 o'clock kick, or noon.
His beautiful daughter and his wife were kind of waiting. Well, you talk about intense.
Yeah.
You think I'm weird? Man. So I felt good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that carried over to the weekend. Now we'll see what happens tonight with El Gigantes.
Yeah.
The line sucks.
Well, and you got game 3.
Yeah, I'm not expecting much. I want to just get by without having to tax the bullpen. Now, this ain't no loser mentality. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Like some of these people on social media Saturday. Oh my gosh,
man, it was dark out there.
Man, I can't
It was dark out there.
I don't even know why I'm surprised, but I'm like, is this really how you folks do life?
That's kind of the thing I keep coming back to, and maybe I'm making too much out of how people react to football games in terms of their general demeanor in life, because I know some people act different. Like our guy RP is a great example. Like the way he reacts to football games versus how he is.
No, that's how he is in real life.
Well, he hasn't been like that with me yet.
That's how he is in real life. Although he's a caregiver.
Yeah.
But he is very matter of fact.
No, but he seems way more measured in real life than he is in football games. So he'll react real time, and that's fine. But I think a lot of people I don't see that separation with most people. If that's kind of how you react to football games, it's generally how you react.
Yeah, it's I tweet out the picture like I do every week of when the team gets to the stadium.
Yeah.
Somebody was like, "Oh, well, why is Coach Rule not with the team?" Because he was kind of off to the side. Well, he was, but it's just when I happen to snap the picture, it's a still.
Yeah.
Right? Or,
it's kind of like those screenshots in the end zone where you're like, look, that guy's wide open, and it's okay, the window wasn't there though.
Yeah. And then, man, gonna be a long day, or somebody asked if I was drinking yet, or I'm like, wow.
It's like that, huh?
It was incredible.
Well, think back to last week though. I think we were the only people I heard, at least publicly, say this thing could be a game late.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
What I said, 10 points in the fourth quarter, within 10 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
You said you thought they had a shot to be in it in the fourth quarter. And so, I get you watch Indiana and you're like, okay, Ohio State's better than Indiana. But again, transitive property is not really a thing.
But we can get in on why I think that is too.
Well, and I also think
the fan base is a microcosm of the way that team plays.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think so too.
Listen, it wasn't a look ahead thing. That is who Ohio State is.
Yeah.
I
think so.
They have a hard time functioning as a unit.
I also think, and that's not, you mentioned that with the defense a lot.
Yeah, but
over the last couple of weeks. But I also think it's true on the offense too.
It is.
They don't, for as many talented players as they have, it should look better than that, I think. Now, a lot of that is Nebraska's defense on Saturday was really, really good, especially your guy you were talking to, Jamari Butler. Jamari Butler, if you just had film from Ohio State, you would think Jamari Butler was one of the handful of best players in the country.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable.
He was incredible. You got a good bounce back from MJ Sherman. You could just tell those guys were. You could just tell they were dialed.
Yeah.
And they competed, right? And
that's what
MJ Sherman had maybe the. I was in love with Coach Rule's press conference, obviously, but
which we'll get to. There's plenty.
MJ was good too, man, because I used to think it was just because it's how I think.
Yeah.
So I was just looking to be validated, but it really is deeper than that because it's how the reason I like it is because it's how I think you have to do life.
So that's my thing is the reason
I think it's how you have to do life.
The reason I'm so enamored with Coach Rule and the way he's trying to run this program and everything is because I have a sort of a set of things that I think actually matter, whether it's in life or
actually.
Well, you gotta do the glasses while you do it.
Yeah.
Our guy Steven.
I brought mine in. The vision is extra blurry today for your boy.
There's a handful of things that I think matter, whether it's in your life or when coaching or whatever. And Coach Rule matches up incredibly well with those things. So whether if you want to call that being validated or whatever, but it's, hey, this guy's worldview matches up with mine. and I want to see that succeed because I do think it matters, right? I think doing things in a way like Coach Rule was talking about, in a way that is sustainable and not a quick fix. Like, how many times do quick fixes work long term?
Yeah, and I think, and he rolled the dice after the game because I know he gave pause. Like, I could hear it.
Mm-hmm. He's like, am I really going to go
and
here?
He's like, man, he had to have.
Yeah.
Like, am I going to go here?
Yeah.
Is this the time I'm going to go here philosophically?
Yeah.
And he went there.
And there's a –
and I didn't mind that because the way that I looked at it is he kind of made that – this is a weird reference, but he kind of made that his Normandy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was going to be
his stand our ground.
He was going to stand on business right there for what he felt like was ailing this program.
And he also put it on, hey, if we don't come back and do this next week, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not I heard some people talking about like, oh, he's trying to avoid football questions or whatever.
So what would the football questions have been?
I'm guessing people are
just give me a couple. Give me one off the bat. Give me one.
The wide receiver screen game.
Okay. Knowing that roughly 2/3 of those are checked by your quarterback.
Yes. Right. It's not like that's the primary option on all of those.
Roughly.
Yeah.
I'm probably within 10%.
I would think so.
Are checked by your quarterback.
So somewhere between 55 and 65%.
They're man check with me. Give me another
one. That's the one I heard. I mean, play calling in general is heard a lot of.
So
not sticking with the run game or not getting to the run game sooner.
And I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are the two I heard. It's just offense stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody can have anything to say about the defense, honestly. Like, I don't know how. If you have anything to say about the defense, I'm probably just not going to listen to you.
I think you have to.
I mean, you're wrong though. Like, if you have anything to say about the defense, what's the complaint about the defense?
I don't know.
Right? Because if you're like, oh well, they had 3 breakdowns, you're never going to play a game where you have.
And I have a lot. I have a lot on that if we get to it, but I do want to hear from
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing I have a hard time with people. Weird analogy here. I was having a conversation on Saturday after the Creighton exhibition about Ryan Kalkbrenner and how some people were saying, like, I don't think he's that good. And I was like, he's incredible. He just doesn't look like you want it to. And it's like, well, he misses like some bunnies around the rim and whatever. And I was like,
he doesn't in the regular season. The guy shoots 70% from the field.
So that's my point I was like, so you just want him to make all of them? Because nobody does that.
The guy is top 5 in the country in
field goal percentage, effective field goal percentage. Like, what? Just pick true shooting percentage.
The guy made 19 straight buckets.
I think it was more than that.
Yeah,
he got into the low 20s, I think. Right. So I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, so you just want him to make all of them? Because that's not a realistic expectation. If somebody has something to say about the defense, that's how I feel. It's like, oh, well, they had the 3 broken plays. It's like everybody gets yards.
Yeah.
Everybody has broken plays.
I understand.
Now, those were particularly damaging or particularly stuck out because they're the only thing Ohio State got.
Yeah.
Right? You're really talking about 3 plays the entire game against Ohio State.
So, for instance, right, like Seth, we'll take a break.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to get to Jaden.
Jaden, hang on the line here.
Why didn't you tell me Jaden was on the phone?
I wasn't paying attention.
Shane, you're supposed to say, hey, Jaden's on the line.
Hey, tell Jaden we'll get to him coming up at the next break here.
I'll do that.
You asked me why I converse with fans sometimes, even though they don't always agree with me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you one because my man Blake is back. Blake is offering solutions.
See, I'll mess with that. It's
Blake,
not if people don't agree with me. I just need you to be somewhat rational.
Blake is offering solutions,
and maybe that's asking
and I'll
too
tell you
much.
what I think Coach Rule was thinking.
We'll get to Blake. We'll get to Jaden on the Hurrdat Hotline here in a little bit, and we'll also set up the show coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
The players would see us, instead of us being defensive as things are said, they would see us stand like men. Anyone can just be defensive. Like, just stand like men in front of them, not blame the players, but work hand in hand with them. And we expected to come here and win the football game. We expected to win. And so I say this, to me, it's so hard because you don't want it to sound like a moral victory because we lost. And we're not here to lose. We're the University of Nebraska. We're not here to lose. But in terms of the development and growth of what you're trying to build, because while the world and everyone wants things to happen quickly, if you want it to be sustainable, if you want it to last forever, you have to do it the right way. I get asked a lot of questions about, why aren't we doing it this way, that way? We're trying to build something sustainable. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Who knows? A lot of you guys have seen a lot of guys come here, try to do it, and it hasn't worked. So I'm trying it a different way. I was proud of that football team today. I was proud. They didn't back down. They had some really tough breaks. They had some things really go against them, even the way we started. And they competed. It was the first time. It's the first time since I've been here that I felt a championship mindset in the locker room. Along with the championship mindset, as those who compete know, comes utter disappointment when you lose.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Let's get to Jaden here. He's been waiting patiently on the Hurrdat hotline. Jaden, what's going on, man?
How's it going, guys?
Jaden, what's up, buddy?
Hey, we need to talk about this, all right? The lack of patience with
I love I love your delivery. It's like, fudge. We just got to address this. The
lack of patience. Okay, guys, I'm 25 years old. I haven't known ever Nebraska to be,
good.
Nebraska.
Yeah.
And the absolute hate that Satterfield receives is mind-boggling to me. I mean, last week the guy's, leave him in Indiana. This week, the line doesn't get much push. Why are we still running the ball? After all week, we say, he can't stick to the run. And then in the third and fourth quarter, we run the ball. And then they're blaming him for not scoring. Okay, should we have scored when we get the ball down to the 7 on an interception? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But a bad spot, Rule talked about that post-game. It's mind-boggling. And then I see people going through on Twitter talking about how his route combos are bad, and one of them was a completion for a first down. The amount of hate this guy receives is just mind-boggling to me. Like, they're in their second year. Last year, I mean, you can wipe off last year's offense off the board with the injuries and how we had to play, but it's mind-boggling to me. I know DB, I know you're a fan of Satterfield, and I feel like I'm defending him in all my friend groups, but it's like we still don't have the athletes we really want to have. And I don't know. It's just all mind-boggling to me, the lack of patience. We just lost by 4 points to the number 4 team in the country, and people were calling to leave Satterfield in Columbus. I don't understand it, guys.
No,
Jaden, appreciate the call.
Yeah,
thank you, guys.
I appreciate it.
Well, and real quick before you get in,
no, I'm cool. Like, hey, this is the people's show. I do love the fact that I have to go back and listen to myself, because I think people, and bless Jaden's heart, because to be his age and still think like that is kind of
all right with Jaden.
Different.
Yeah,
it's kind of different. Don't confuse my affinity for him as a person.
Right. With him as a coach.
Or
play caller, I think.
Or as a play caller or anything.
Because I think that's where I'd like to make a distinction with Satterfield.
Because I love it. Listen, I gave him a huge hug Saturday morning.
Yeah.
He comes out at the same time. He does
not strike me as a hugger.
I make him. He's not. He's not. But I see. Listen, I'm full disclosure.
I know you're a touch guy.
But full disclosure,
yeah,
we're kind of the same in the fact that 95% of the time I'm gonna pass. I don't wanna hug you.
Yeah,
I don't. But if I like you, I'll hug you all day long.
Yeah.
Or it's okay if we do.
Yeah.
DJ used to give me the willies. He would always give me a hug, and I'm like, does he like me? Because this is early. It's like 4. And I'm like. But now when I see him, it's awkward if I don't.
Yeah.
So I just make him. Like, he didn't even get up. He was sitting down. So imagine how awkward that is. I mean,
dude, the up down hug is always hilarious. There's no good way to do it.
It's kind of weird.
There's no good way to do it.
But I made him do it anyway. Friday night, we're unloading, and his family's waiting for him. Yeah, I don't know when's the last time he's seen his wife and his daughter. I high five his daughter in the hallway. I said, best wishes, taking that 34 on the ACT to a 36. And his wife's got this southern accent. And she said, you're not on the string my husband up bandwagon, are you? I was like, nah. Hey, just her delivery. Like, she's great.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give them a hug. Now, there's some things that
I want to start with.
But I like it. I like his temperament.
Sure.
Because he's loyal and he doesn't know it all.
So there's three things.
He's extremely loyal.
3 things I want to get to there. And I'll start with
and he works hard.
And I'll start with that is if you trust Rule, if you're like, I'm all in on Rule, whatever, you may have to accept the fact that with Marcus Satterfield, there may be something more important to him,
100%,
more important to Rule about Satterfield than his play calling or whatever we have an issue with.
Beautiful distinction.
Right?
I'll take it.
So that's number 1. Number 2, I would like to make a distinction between his ability as a coach and as a play caller, because those are different skill sets, right? I actually do think he's a good coach. I do think I've got some questions about play calling.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to make that distinction, right?
It's fair, yeah.
And third is, let's not pretend like there weren't 2 wide open touchdowns that got missed.
No, I know.
Right?
I know.
Like,
I know.
Okay, so I'm just gonna remind people, right? Because how different do we feel, regardless of what the final score ends up being? How different do we feel about the offense if they got 31 on the board instead of 17? Right? That's a big deal. And I'm not even gonna talk about the spots on the first thing or in the third and goal or whatever. Like, I'm not even going there. I'm just talking about, like, hey, if our quarterback, who I know can make those throws, and I believe long term will make those throws, just makes those throws, then we're having a whole different conversation about the offense.
100%.
You put up just as many points as Oregon on Ohio State, we're having a whole different conversation about the offense, right?
Like, yeah, I'm with you.
Right.
And I think you can say that and say, hey, like my man Blake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I talk to Blake a lot. And Blake's the one that started with the getting inside the red zone numbers. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Like points per but it originally started, like conversations really started more on the complaining side.
Mm-hmm.
But I was vibing with him because I felt like he understands football.
Yeah, he was digging into it.
So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, let me stay with this, right? So he hits me with this. Blake's up early. I don't even know if he's Midwest time. I don't even know where Blake is. I've never met Blake, but I like Blake. So Blake's like, hey, the Huskers are now 4.57 points per red zone attempt. That doesn't even crack the top 100 in the country. Mm-hmm. But they're still averaging 3.8 red zone attempts per game, which is top 40.
Mm-hmm. Which you'll take.
I'll take that, because if you get there enough, you should get in.
100%.
And I go back to the couple of things you said. Either just pick one of the 2 passes, or Dowdell gets in.
Yeah.
Okay. So just one of those 2 things happens. But he says, but to see, this is the part I can get, because he doesn't have to just agree with me, because I'm not pumping Coach Satterfield down your throat as everything's perfect.
No, let's just look at it realistically.
Because he said he comes back with this. Still getting to the red zone plenty, but have become far less efficient over the last 3 games. I get that does include that crazy weather game. I'm willing to take that into account. But that was also against what will likely be potentially the two best opponents on your schedule. I think that's I'll ride with that. Like, we'll see.
Probably. Good chance.
Need Raiola to make a couple of more throws he's capable of making.
100%.
But I also feel you need to try something different in the red zone. If you're going to run the ball 4 times from the 7, put Harburg in. At the very least, have some stones and run a bootleg or something with Dillon.
So I'll ride with that.
I'm like,
not the Harburg part as much. I'm not as obsessed with the Harburg stuff as other people.
I do.
But I'll say get more creative.
Okay, so let's
100%.
let's not hammer on the specifics of Harburg.
Yeah,
but let's
get more creative.
Inside the 20, you have to have quarterback run game does matter.
100%.
Because the field is condensed.
And you know how I feel about a quarterback boot goal line.
But see, like that right there is, and if they could, and these aren't, he's not.
No, those are reasonable.
Yeah, this isn't Bill Walsh, right?
Yeah. No, that's regular stuff,
right?
Yeah. And we saw Dillon move better this week.
You changed they played 2-man. You want me to get into that?
Let's Jack, hold on the line here. We'll get to you here.
There's lots.
It's coming up on the break. It's gonna be a long week. We got plenty to talk about.
any other solutions or something, or you've never had to oversee anything of greater good, right? Like, even sometimes if you want a divorce, you have to think about the long-term ramifications, even though you do it tomorrow if you could.
Yeah, especially if there's kids involved, right?
Right.
Like, okay, what's the greater good here?
So it's like,
income is useful.
so you can't think of it like that. And don't make any of these sweeping generalizations like, well, and he better and they should. Like, let it play out. What you need to worry about and what we need to worry about is how do you get better in the meantime? Because as the CEO, you're not afforded the luxury to just cancel. You don't. You have to get through, because there's still 110 people that you're trying to teach something to.
And all the things that you wanted.
It's all people. Oh, love the presser, but you still got to get rid of Satterfield. Okay, man. Like, you're a miserable person. You may be right. Let's entertain your right. Let me just say, oh, okay. Hey, you should probably do that. What good does that do you tomorrow?
Yeah, it doesn't help you in season.
What, like?
Because let me tell you something.
So stop telling me that.
Because let me tell you something. I talked to a guy who knows, right? Who has incredible, does an incredible job with analytics.
TK's mad at me about my camera.
He does an incredible job with analytics.
My camera broke.
And it shouldn't be. You shouldn't even have your camera going. We use the main camera now.
Yeah, TK.
So I don't even know what's happening. No, I talked to a guy who does an incredible job with analytics.
Yeah.
And so people say, hey, you fire Satterfield, you have Glenn Thomas call the plays. I got bad news for you guys. The analytics on Glenn Thomas as a play caller are worse than they are on Marcus Satterfield.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Like, that is just strictly numbers, because you guys all want to talk to me about numbers and yards per play and all this kind of stuff, right? You want to talk about that? The analytics on Glenn Thomas as a play caller are worse than Marcus Satterfield.
Just imagine
So if you just want to
2 trips Saturday, and you convert in the red zone, which, in my opinion, at the end of the day, see, people hear this, oh, we're going defending Satterfield. No, I'm practical, and I coach and I play. So I play. So I kind of know that it's more than just a play call, because there's this fine line between execution and the play call. There was this nice little Floyd concept. Jalen Lloyd ran a nice little, it's like a little 14 to 16 speed out. That thing was wide open, right? Wide open. Just let that bad boy rip. Didn't got pulled down from behind. Gets to be a sack. I looked at Sharpie. I'm like, shoot, man, he was wide open. Sometimes you just gotta let that thing go. Doesn't look like a great play call because there's a sack, because it's sprint out, right? But and it's not always on young Dylan Raiola, but because sometimes, like last week, conversely, if you're gonna put Harburg in the game inside the 20 and he runs for 7 yards, stay with it.
Yeah, sure.
So that can happen, right?
Yeah.
Like I can.
Guess
what I'm not gonna say? I'm not. Oh man, fire that guy yesterday. It's not happening.
Yeah, let's entertain. Hey, they need to find something else at offensive coordinator. We can entertain that. That's fine. But like you're saying, that doesn't help them this year.
Yeah, the whole fire Foley thing, right? That you know how a coach has to look at it.
How?
Let me tell. This is. Fudge. Somebody send him this, and he's going, how does he know what I'm thinking? I'm sick of these people telling me what I'm thinking. You know what he has to think about?
What's that?
This is what I would think about if I was the head coach. See, we're fawning over Hole now, right? Who's the guy coaching him?
Well, people are going to be, it's Maher. That's what they're going to say.
It's not.
That's what they say, though. That's the argument. Because I had this conversation over the weekend. Because I was like, okay, so we're going to blame him for the kickoff receptions, right? With Barney and then Ives. And I was like, okay, well, he held Barney accountable.
Do we know how long Maher's been there? Like, you don't listen to people. Listen,
I know, but that's what I'm saying. That's
people
what
can make you dumber.
But I was like, so we're going to blame him.
He's got to think to himself. Well, he's got coaching that. Do you see Nebraska's kickoff coverage?
Yeah.
You realize Ohio State's kickoff coverage was top 30 in the country going into Saturday. Who looked like the better kickoff coverage unit?
Nebraska.
Yeah. Although I'm not sure what Ives was thinking.
I don't either.
Might have been a sunball.
I'm just saying, you can't blame him for Ives and then not give him credit for the field goals being improved.
You ain't got, listen.
Right? You don't got. You can't do both.
people that aren't connected to decision making can afford the picking and choosing.
Yeah.
Globally, as a leader, you're not afforded that luxury until you have to make that decision.
Absolutely.
So I'm just telling you that things like that have to be going through his mind.
And again, I don't even know, like, maybe there is a better special teams coordinator out there than Ed Foley. But A, that's not fixing anything in season. And B, you got to look at the whole picture then.
Yeah.
Let's get to Jack real quick on the Hurrdat hotline. Jack, what's going on, man?
Actually, we have Nate. Jack dropped off.
All right, let's go to Nate.
What's going on?
Good morning, my friends. How are you?
Oh, my goodness. After that scud you dropped last week, welcome back, buddy. What's going on?
Man, no scuds today, I think. So I do agree with you first. While I'm a fervent believer in Satterfield has no chance of ever moving the program in probably stupid. From a leadership perspective, you would do more harm to culture, the marginal benefit you might get by getting somebody other than Thomas, because Rav is like Thomas is not.
Okay.
But I will say, special teams, fly hole, huh? I mean, that was, if you lay the odds that dude would knock back, what was it, the second longest field goal in 30?
Oh, it was 54-yarder.
Right? Yeah. Pretty good kick.
I mean, that, and let's be real, that was good for 10 more yards.
Yeah.
That could have literally pushed NCAA record. I mean, he killed them, right? I am beginning to wonder. I like your holistic approach. You know, I'm big in nonlinear dynamics when I do analysis. So we'll get rid of small fluctuations here. But I do not understand. If we know that Castaneda will not fumble punts, why is he not now back at kickoffs? I don't understand little micro decisions that are having massive effects now, multiple weeks in a row. I think we know our kickoff return unit is completely inept. I mean,
yeah.
We've gone beyond discussing, are they returning it enough? And we're now, are they even going to keep the ball in play? We need to really examine the personnel back there. I don't even think that's a coaching thing. That is an execution thing. Catching the ball is not a coaching thing. If you couldn't catch the ball, you wouldn't have gotten a scholarship in the first place, presumably.
Yeah.
So we are. That is solely execution. And I think what I've seen in terms of cover, I mean, Foley, to talk about Foley is ridiculous, because even when he was 1 for 5, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not an Alvarado fan. I think Alvarado really is only there because Matt wanted to answer immediately in his tenure. Hey, we got to recruit the Nebraska kids, and the kid got the field goal. He's not Nebraska arguably has historically been kicker U, or in that discussion with Florida State and Ohio State. Alvarado's not there.
Appreciate it, Nate. Not a dumbass this week. We appreciate it.
That's my man Alvano. We can't get an Alvano, not Alvarado.
Carlos, for the Pelicans.
Hey, knock it off, all right?
We'll be back with Sam McKewon coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. That kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
I thought we found some runs in the third quarter. We ran a couple wham trap plays. We whammed the 3 technique, and Dante close to splitting one. He looked like he was about to go for 80, and the guy came and tackled him around the ankles. So I thought we got the run game going there. And, we punted the ball down, then we got the pick, so we played on their side of the 50. We look back at the game just from a football perspective. You have to make more of those opportunities, whether it's the goal line plays that Sam talked about or not always kicking field goal, but scoring some more touchdowns. That was part of it. But, again, they have a great defense. But our kids made some plays to hang in there, stay with it.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
How you guys doing?
Good. Better question is, are you good after yesterday? I know you're not scheming plays to handballs to your linemen.
Yeah, that was good. That was great, wasn't it?
It's incredible.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, it was
like it was. I don't even like piling on because I mean, as a Steelers fan, I've seen them do a lot of stupid things. But wow.
I am a diehard Bears fan, but I have a lot of equanimity, and so I'm happy for Jaden Daniels in Washington. That city and that team needs it. And so I was happy for that. Obviously the Bears had an opportunity to win that game by more than 3, and they probably should have. But, that was a terrible end of the game. That was, I said a few choice phrases right as that happened. Now, my wife obviously is from Cleveland, so she's a huge Browns fan. And so we saw this scenario play out earlier in the day, only to our favor. So last play of the game, Lamar Jackson scrambling, and he scrambled for a very long time, rolled to his right, kind of threw it up, and
across the field.
The Browns just have better defensive coaches than the Bears do. So, we won one and we lost one yesterday on that kind of scenario, and we'll take 50%.
Sam, was there any point where Jane Daniels lets that thing go from like the 35 and you're like, oh yeah, that's not going to get to the end zone?
No, he threw it 65 yards in the air.
When the ball went up, I thought, and then it was coming down. I'm like, that's almost going to get there. And then, I saw the tip, and I mean, that was the easiest Hail Mary catch of all time, and it's just sitting there for him. And he caught it that way too. That's what I appreciated. He didn't try to pretend, he didn't leave his feet or anything, but that's a tough one. Again, there's a lot of things about the Bears that I like. I like Caleb Williams. I thought he battled in the second half of that game. They're in a great division. So the chances of them advancing or to the playoffs are slim, but I think I ranked it 4th on my all-time Bears gut punch things. The first one was Marion Barber running out of bounds and Tim Tebow beating him. That's the angriest I've ever been at a Bears game. Another one was
Tim
Don
Tebow
McKewon.
got me too. So,
oh God,
yeah, that guy completed 4 passes and one of them was a house call to Demarius. That's like,
oh yeah,
boy, it is awesome.
I know what play you're talking about too.
Yeah. I'm still mad at
yards or whatever.
Yeah, we're down to like our 55th string pair of safeties because Clark can't play, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I hate this guy.
It was like you were insulted if he beat you.
Oh yeah.
And so Marion Barber running out of bounds was number 1.
Thanks, Sam.
Don McKewon, that's very old. That's from the late 80s.
Yeah.
The Bears got screwed.
Well, remember that was the famous he's rallying the crowd with the towel against the Bears that game. Do you know how I know? Do you know why I remember that game? Because we were in meetings. Honest to God, Sam, this is a true story. We're in running back meetings. And Coach Solich was telling us how to control our temperament on the sidelines and how to be good teammates. And he had the folks, it was probably Moose or Carp, one of those guys like cut up film. And it was Mikowski on the bench at Green Bay waving the towel. And he said, "Don't be like this idiot. Stay in the game." And I'll never forget that. And it was the blonde, free-flowing locks of this dude helicoptering his towel in the air. He had all these little mini cut-ups. It was an absolute gem. That's Coach Solich through and through. Don't be like this idiot.
It was, I remember.
Yeah.
And then there was double doink, and then there was the Aaron Rodgers 4th and 8 when, nobody covered. Randall Cobb and Julius Peppers didn't sack him. Well, that was a lot. I think that was Lovie Smith's last game as a Bears coach. Anyway, this was 5th on that list. And some of that's because Jaden Daniels is awfully likable and Washington needs something and, but it is what it is. And we move on and they've got, they've still got 6 division games to play. And if they win 3 of those, I'll be thrilled.
Yeah.
Sam, let's get to Nebraska here. Just as you're kind of sitting and watching in real time Rule's post-game presser, like what's your thought process as you're kind of taking in that information and just taking in what he's laying out in front of us of what he's trying to do?
Well, I'm trying to listen pretty closely because, we're going in there trying to just talk about the game. And obviously he had some thoughts that he couldn't have really, he couldn't have gathered all of those before the game because he didn't know exactly how they'd respond. But obviously he had a lot of things that he wanted to say. And so you have to, when you don't know exactly where a coach is going, you have to try to pay close attention to where he's going. And so you're just trying to process that in the moment. And then, some people ask questions about that speech. I did not. I figured other people would. And so, I asked about the 4th down or the goal line sequence and maybe one other question too, related to losing a timeout. So I tried to keep it specific to the game because I think people still want to hear about that. And I kind of had a sense that, and Tom Chattel wrote a really good column about what Matt Rule said, and I hope people read it. Kind of in the sense that Tom would focus on that. So that's kind of what I'm doing in that moment, trying to listen and then trying to kind of store that for later. Obviously that speech is important for where they're going this month. I don't know that it has a ton to do with the actual football they're going to play, like play to play. This is the moment where it's like, okay, guys, we showed that we're not who we were at Indiana. Now we've got to bring that every single week in November. And I think if Nebraska brings that, they should like some of the results.
I'm almost just the opposite. I think I joked with Ravi that it was kind of like his Normandy, right? I think that was the game that he wanted to take the stand of the psychology of where he wanted his team to go, because I'm not so sure he wants them, or he thinks that play-to-play is the problem. Like, it doesn't mean it's not true. It's just that if I could pick on a handful of things that if I wanted to give this team a remedy, their emotion and their mentality would be far greater up on that list than execution. Because I think he thinks if they think better collectively, they'll stay in the moment better sequentially, if that makes any sense.
I do. Yeah, and certainly I understand that. I think, he made some references to they thought it was going to be a different game at Indiana than it was. I don't know that he was talking about strategy. I don't know if he thought they took Indiana lightly. I don't know. He didn't really. But then he said if we're going to act like front runners, which made me think, again, what is that a reference to Nebraska thinking it's better than it is? But, the framework of an honest day's work and building it long, I think he does want his players to hear that is, certainly that they have to bring a certain mindset and toughness and culture and all those things. And again, if they bring that, I think they're going to like what comes. I think what I mean is that I don't know that there's going to be in November, there's going to be a lot of referendum speeches. You're 8 games into the season, you're 2/3 of the way through the season, you are who you are. And you're either going to play the football you want to play or you're not. It's not going to be, well, this week we're going to have a new, at some point that stuff kind of wears out and you are who you are. So I think he wants them to kind of bring that every week. And again, if they do that, I think they're going to like the results. Don't know that they're going to win all the games, but I do think they'll like where the season goes.
Sam, let's get into the football a little bit here. Obviously, game played out much closer than most people thought it was going to, at least around here. But I also saw, at least kind of in my social media and talking to people, it didn't really feel like at any point Nebraska fans actually thought they were going to or could win that game. Were you kind of processing or watching that and just waiting for Ohio State to pull away? Or did you get to a point where you thought Nebraska might actually be able to get this one?
Yeah, I thought Nebraska had a real chance in the second half. Ohio State.
Yep.
So I went in with a couple of things. And the first thing I thought is, can Nebraska's receivers win? And in a way they did. They drew some pass interference penalties. Did they bring their best effort? I thought they did pretty well. I thought Will Howard would throw at least one pick, and he threw one. It's too bad that they didn't get in harm's way for a second. I think that might have tipped the game, but they didn't really get there. That was the only one he threw in.
Well, you're a defensive holding penalty away early from them really being on the struggle bus, Sam.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, I mean, because that ball was airmailed.
That
wasn't on time. That wasn't good either. So I was just like, wow, he could be off to this hot start and it could yield absolutely nothing. Then you start looking at yourself like, we can't run the ball. What are we doing?
Right. And they didn't run the ball, and their coaches and players were very complimentary of Nebraska for calling, run blitzes. It worked.
Yeah.
And I think Ohio State got frustrated. Then Nebraska did a nice job holding on to the ball. They ran the ball just well enough. They hit, I think, 4 runs for more than 10 yards. Those helped. They hit a couple of throws. I mean, I understand people's consternation with the screen game or whatever people are calling that. Not all of those were screens, but
there
not throwing.
They're check with me, right? They're.
Yeah, some of those are, but I think there's a thought process of like, you want to limit turnover. Anyway, I thought the offensive game plan was fine for almost all of the game. There was maybe a 3rd and 9. Where 3rd and 7 inside the Ohio State whatever, I'm like, let Dylan throw the ball here. Let him throw it. He's got to, don't just play for the field goal here, but whatever. That I think that was on their first drive that they put a field goal on. So there's a number of things that I think they did pretty well in that game. I did think they had a chance to win it when they go up 17-14. Nebraska's defense needed to get a stop. And Chip Kelly comes out with a nice play, gets a 33-yard gain off the jump, and then it gets down to that 4th and 2. They were afraid to run the ball, and they hit, Howard threw a nice little throw in the flat. He got like 2 yards, and that was probably the game. So I did not think Nebraska was going to answer. I wrote on Twitter, it's not against the rules for Nebraska to answer here, but I was going to be surprised. I thought Ohio State's crowd got really ticked off, and once that happened, the environment was very, very difficult. That was as hard as any quarterback that Nebraska's had since Tanner Lee at Penn State. Nobody's played in that hard of an environment. I've been at all the road games, so I can tell you that was as hard of an environment at that moment after the targeting penalty as any Nebraskan quarterback's faced in a long, long time.
I don't know, Sam. Yes. I don't want to be confrontational. Yes. I thought they sucked, to be honest. Like,
at the end of the game.
That south end zone was not good. They were gone. That was 6 minutes left. But I get it, right? And listen, I don't want to be combative because we get along well. I think your benchmark for that noise was based on what it had been all day. Not that it was of all time. It was just as loud as they had been all day. They weren't in they weren't in the top 30 of noise, in my opinion, for 55 minutes.
No, they weren't. Not for 55 minutes. That's right. At the very end of the game, at the end, that's very, very hard. And part of, I think, probably what made it harder is it hadn't been that way all day.
Yeah, it was sleepy,
and so when it got, it was very quiet. But at the end of the game,
where did everybody go? Where do you think everybody went? Like, were they going to drink or going back to listen to the karaoke guy that did the pregame music?
Yeah.
Like, what was possible? Because it was a later arriving crowd.
It was, and I think the crowd there is hard to please.
Oh,
and they're
booze.
They're getting.
I was ask Ryan Day about that.
The booze were incredible.
They're hard to please. Hard to please, and so they're tired of. I think they're tired of Ryan Day. I don't really know why. I mean, I don't know that any other coach was going to come in there other than Nick Saban and win more. But
you know what I think.
Tired of him.
You know what I think it is. I think it's his his delivery. He's very
like understated almost.
Yeah, I think they want more sense of urgency from him, but it's not his style. Like, I don't know if communication wise he's ever going to be a good fit for them because he's not as, I think, demonstrative as they want him to.
Or like as charismatic as like an Urban Meyer.
You know, I just think it's a way he disseminates information disconnect because he sure does win.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with that. You know, I mean, Jim Tressel was pretty boring, but yeah, I don't know. I think that they're mad about the Michigan stuff, losing to that team the way they have a couple of times, and I don't know. Whatever reason, they're hard to please. But at the end of the game, that's a really tough crowd. Those 5 minutes, yes, at the very end, you know. And I remember again, as I kind of cataloged the games that Nebraska's had over the years, the crowd at the end, that was going to be very hard for Dylan to drive into that. They get a false start, and then, you know, things just don't go well, and they lose the game. And
you know what I think could be
that's all fine.
You know what I think could be a really good player that has a lot of room to grow? There's Jalen Lloyd.
Offense?
Yep, as Jalen Lloyd.
Yeah. They got to use him more.
Yep. He wins a lot. And the thing that I like, and granted, I do know his personality, he's tough. Like, he's highly, highly competitive. So he's one of those guys that hears like perimeter run blocking talk, and he's going to say to himself, all right, we'll see about that, right? Like, I'm going to throw my little 175-pound rear end into whatever I can to make plays. Like, he's a guy that I would like to see them use a lot more because he gets open too.
Yeah, most athletes with moms who are great athletes are usually pretty tough.
Oh, Sam,
so,
Sam, you comedian,
I think that's
you.
No, I'm serious. Like, his mom was an incredible athlete and a great one, you know. And so I think he's tough and
touche.
Because they don't cut him. They don't cut their sons a lot of slack. So,
Yeah.
I think he's really tough. Yeah. Jacory is Dylan's roommate. And so, and this stuff's real. Chemistry with quarterbacks and receivers is real.
Yep.
And you've got quarterbacks have to work really hard to develop universal chemistry. And, receivers and tight ends need to learn to earn a quarterback's trust. And even if Dylan's only 18 or 19 years old, he's still the one throwing the football. He likes throwing to Jacory Barney. He does. Mm-hmm. And Jacory Barney has made him right. Jacory Barney's made plays, so you can't blame him. Mm. But they weren't throwing to Fedoni enough early in the season, in my opinion. Now they are. They need to get Lloyd more involved, too. So Raiola's got to what do you call it? He's got to expand the menu of options that he's throwing to, and he's getting there, But you can tell when he likes throwing an Ayor a lot, that deep ball. He trusts him.
Yeah.
There's a trust there.
I did like the fact that they took some shots in those 3x1s. I was talking about it all broadcast, where those are things I don't think that they were doing earlier in the season enough, because those guys could win. And Nair almost had it pay off a couple of times, and we saw what happened with those.
Well, that's a catch. Their first play of the game, that was a catch.
So I think so too, but this is what I don't know. You're like, well, this is what you do, shouldn't you know? But so if the ground doesn't aid the catch, even though it hits the ground, it's supposed to be a catch, right? Like, I just didn't know if that was an NFL thing.
It started in the NFL. It got adopted by college after it got adopted by the NFL. But if the ground doesn't aid the catch, it's supposed to be a catch.
So then I immediately went to glass half full mode, and I'm like, well, shoot. All right, you still found a way to flip the field. You shanked the ball. You fielded the ball you shouldn't. You went 3 and out, and you're still right here. Like, let's play ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, and the 2 offensive pass interferences were garbage. The one on Banks was terrible, and he made a great catch. And it's unfortunate that a couple of those things happened because they were bad calls. And so, they overcame those things. There's a lot to like out of that game. A lot to like on both sides of the ball. Thought Deshaun Singleton played, his best game of the season or darn near.
I just would have just a couple of cat and mouse communication things on that back end where they're still growing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Butler played real well. Yeah, there are. I mean, touchdown to Jeremiah Smith is that's an awfully hard play.
And you know what? The way that they defended it early, it's too much for radio. But I'm telling you, it was punch, counter punch, punch back, and Nebraska went from cover 3 to cover 2, then back to cover 3, and I think they thought they had a tendency, and Ohio State came back with the little switch release thing to Jeremiah Smith. It was a thing of beauty to watch those two minds go back and forth. There was a lot going on. And I think, Sam, while you're on it, I think we should probably give either some credit or some patience, because the secondary has been maligned, right? I mean, yeah, they got to win some more one-on-ones or whatever. But from a tackling and getting into the box, one thing I think we got to understand is Coop coached it one way out of certain coverages, and Coach Butler coaches it another way out of coverages. So I think, and this isn't an excuse, it's an explanation, because there's ownership in it. They're telling themselves, we're still trying to marry the two, because Butler's not used to his 3 techniques or guys along the D line or whatever, like not winning. So being a backside run fitter from the safety spot is new for him. Right. So it's like, you don't worry about the first run against Indiana where Ellison kind of cut that thing all the way back. Those don't happen in the NFL. So to get a backside safety to run fit there, it is a different philosophy in college than it is in the league. I mean, Ed Oliver's going to make that play on the backside.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I think we have to kind of understand the growth and the marriage between the two.
That's fair. I think there's obviously they've had a transition there, and they're not having Tommy Hill for much of the season. Obviously that changes things. I think they've played okay. I mean, I think I think they've done all right. I don't think it's been perfect by any means.
No. I mean, yeah.
I think
that's right.
I think they have an opportunity in the final month against UCLA, USC. USC's got a very good pass offense. Wisconsin and Iowa, they have a chance to play their best football in the secondary, and I think they have a chance to on offense, at least until they play Iowa, play the kind of football that they want to play without having to kind of bang their head against the wall. Like, they have an opportunity. I don't know that they're going to do it. They've got to do it. But there's a chance here. I mean, it's not bereft of good things. So again, this month is important. They have an opportunity. They're 5-3. The range of outcomes is 5-7 to 9-3.
Yeah.
And you could argue me into all four of those. I suspect it'll land somewhere in the middle, but they have an opportunity to have a really notable season or a season that is very disappointing. We'll just have to. They got to play their way through it, and they have an opportunity, and their quarterback is healthy, relatively healthy. That's good news. Let's see what happens.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, great stuff as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care.
Marty Cordero from Union Omaha coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the Pillar Exterior stage. If you missed the end of that segment with Sam, make sure you go back and download it on the podcast and get all the great stuff that Sam had for us here. But now we're going to talk to our friend Marty Cordero from Union, Omaha. Marty, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning. It's a great Monday. How are you guys?
Hanging in there, Coach El Champion. How are you feeling? All right? Sinking in?
Feeling great. Great. You know, it's another regular season Players' Shield title for the Owls, the second out of 2 years for Coach Casciato. And this Sunday, 2:30 at Warner Park, we'll be hosting first round of the playoffs, and CBS Sports Network picked the game up on Saturday, so it's going to be nationally televised 2:30 this Sunday.
Look at you.
I mean, so Marty, what's it like to be you? Because you're just like picking up trophies left and right. So you're going from, you got Storm Chasers, getting a little International League title, then you go pick up a Players' Shield. Like, it's pretty good to be Marty Cordero these days.
Are you moving Yoda out and the Shield in, or what are we doing with the office?
You're going to run out of room.
No, Yoda stays where he is. Players' Shield is a soccer team trophy, not in my office. So no, there's a lot of great things happening. You're right. A lot of busyness at the ballpark, and this squad, led by Steven DeSantos, who announced his retirement on Saturday. So these will be the last three matches for him in his career, and then Rashid Buhu in goal. He's the only 5-year player we've had. And so he's been on 5 consecutive playoff teams. So those men and our soccer front office and soccer coaching staff, they deserve all the accolades.
So Marty, I know on Saturday was Fan Appreciation Day, and I saw some photos on social media. Like, you guys did some pretty cool stuff for your fans.
Yeah, it's again, marketing staff, Alexis Boulos, our GM. They're doing what we need to do to grow the franchise, and we got a lot of great support from our supporters groups as well.
Marty, she's hilarious. We've obviously had her on a couple of times, and my buddy always jokes with me, you don't get this life without him in it. This has got to be one of those times, with whether it's the Jägermeister Cup or the travel schedule, or you're on the road for a week, you're back and forth juggling, where you don't get this life without a good admin team as part of it, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it doesn't matter if it's the sales department, marketing department, or in the case of Warner Park right now, operations and grounds don't get the credit they deserve, flipping back and forth between sports. We had Stampede bull riding event 3 weeks ago. There's just a lot. And our commitment to Sarpy County going all the way back to March of 2009 was, we're going to use this facility for much more than just, at that time, Storm Chasers AAA baseball, and we'll continue to do that, DB, and it's not easy though, and again, the folks behind the scenes don't get the love and accolades that they should.
So Marty, you obviously mentioned Sunday 2:30 p.m. for that playoff matchup. How can people go get tickets for that?
The easiest is to go to unionomaha.com. unionomaha.com. The ticket office will be open this morning about 10 a.m. 202-738-5100. But we want fans to come out, and much like we've talked about on the other side with baseball, minor league sports playoffs don't generally draw what you average during a regular season. So, we're playing on Sunday for a reason. The Chiefs are on Monday night. The Huskers are on Saturday. Sunday afternoon.
Louisiana Tech's on Saturdays.
I didn't know they were playing football anymore, but that's another story. So, so it's strategically placed. Don't bring up sore subjects.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. But we strategically placed that.
I'll be rooting
Sunday
you on against Sam Houston, though.
Yeah, but they're on Thursday, I believe, or is it tomorrow?
Yeah, it's the 29th. It's tomorrow.
I can't keep track of the little leagues midweek schedules. It's hard. It's hard to keep up with that. But good on the dogs. Good on the dogs. Man, you've got me off my game here. Come on, DB.
I'm sorry.
You're messing with the mojo.
I'm sorry. Back to Union Omaha. Your dominance and getting ready for the playoffs. I'm sorry.
But no, so hopefully Sunday is a great opportunity for people to come out. Parking lots will open around 11 or 11:30. There's tailgating opportunities. Gates at 1:30 and then 2:30 kick. And once we get rolling, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. At Warner Park. If you haven't experienced soccer or soccer specifically at Warner Park yet, we urge you to come out and try it. And DB, we missed each other on the 2nd for the Kids Day, but we got to get you out for some soccer this year.
Yeah, you know what? You just need to call me or send send a car.
I know.
Send a car for me, MC. I mean, know people. Let's be like, hey, go get my guy. He's about 8 minutes away. He can see my lights at nighttime. Let's go. I'm telling you, Marty, I'm there for you.
I know. Hey, look, DB, and all kidding aside, really enjoy hearing you on the call and bringing your perspective, both from the technical side of what's going on in the field for the Huskers, but the perspective you bring is it's welcomed, and congratulate you on your continued run doing color for the Huskers.
I appreciate you, MC. You're my man. Thank you,
Marty. We appreciate it as always. Everybody, make sure you get out to Union Omaha on Sunday, 2:30 p.m. for the playoffs. Anything else you got for us, Marty?
Yeah, I just look. Let's give our guy what he deserves, the credit he deserves. Salvador Perez just this morning named the Roberto Clemente Award winner. I don't know that there's a more deserving player from his background, where he came from, his commitment to one organization, which is really rare in these days, beginning to end of career, and obviously World Series winner, Gold Glove winner, Silver Slugger winner, all the things he's done for Kansas City and for baseball, and to see him recognized. And I'm really excited to see him receive that award during the World Series. It's really an amazing recognition and accomplishment for what he's earned.
Great stuff, Marty. We appreciate it, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Thanks, MC.
Take care.
Okay, buddy.
That's Marty Cordero, president of Union Omaha. Yeah, he is on a run. He's doing pretty good.
Yeah, must be nice.
I wanted to get to a couple things that came in. So we got a couple minutes left here in the segment.
In the segment?
In the segment. There is some noise on Twitter that Chase Lofton, the tight end from Millard South, is going to be visiting Nebraska this weekend, and Steve Wiltfong from On3 has put in one of his Fong bombs. They call them not quite as catchy as a Woj bomb, but he believes he's going to flip from Florida State to Nebraska. So that's the latest news that we've got on the Nebraska recruiting for people that are into that type of thing.
Yeah, if you're into that.
If you're into like recruiting and Fong bombs.
Another in-state guy potentially staying home.
Yeah, highly touted. Can't imagine why you wouldn't want to go to Florida State right now.
Yeah.
Just a casual 1-7, which means I owe Ryan Peters lunch.
Fudge.
That's fine.
Dude's going to be eating for free for the rest of his life.
I know.
One-sided bets he keeps making.
I'm just saying, he goes, I was happy to make that bet. He goes first half against Boston College, the second game of the season. He goes, they're not making a bowl game. I was like, come on, man. Now I'm like, they'll be like if they win another game this year.
1-7.
You know,
Look, I smell bad.
That's that program's a really good example of A, being patient, and then B, doing things sustainably versus not doing things sustainably, because they had to be patient with Mike Norvell to get to that 10-3. It wasn't until year 4 they goes 10-3, they goes 13-0. But there was a lot of transfers.
Yeah.
A lot of transfer guys. Now they've recruited well, but they haven't had a lot of depth in their recruiting classes. And when you miss and you don't have that depth of your high school recruiting to kind of fall back on, dear God, it gets ugly in a hurry. I mean, my Lord, has that gotten ugly in a hurry?
Yeah, it's the bulk of your program. The meat and potatoes got to be high school and development, and then you supplement with the portal.
I saw a stat through the last 3 years that the team with the better high school recruiting rankings, wins about 75% of those games. Yeah. So in the transfer portal era, high school
development still matters.
Yeah, high school recruiting and development still pretty important. We'll get back to Nebraska coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio as we wrap up hour number 2 here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. That's DBM Ravi Lulla. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, as well as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And we're brought to you by our friends at MH Hospitality. MH Hospitality has hotels not just in Omaha. They got them in Missouri. They got them in Alabama. Make sure you go check out their website,
Alabama,
like Forrest Gump. Make sure you check out their website, mhhospitality.net, to see all their different locations. It's about the holiday time. You're going to have some in-laws coming in town, maybe some family. Have them stay at places like Home 2 Suites in Omaha, Fairfield Inn and Suites, Hampton Inn. Make sure you go check those places out, because at MH Hospitality, you stay once and carry memories forever. It's mhhospitality.net. Hey, Shane, there's a clip from the broadcast on Saturday that I'd like you to play. DB got into something after the game that I'd like us to talk about.
Really heartfelt, passionate, honest remarks. I can't remember a press conference like that, DB, where a head coach comes in and just bears it all out, especially after a loss like that.
He's ours. And I think we need to step back, pull back, and be appreciative of that. And I try not to get like this, B-Mac, but I'm in education, and I was a special ed major. My wife is in education, and when you're other-centered and you have other people's best interest at heart, those are the kinds of things you say. It's authentic. It's not manufactured. It doesn't come from a script. When you speak things out of peace and love, it used to be the way you do it, right? You could tell me anything. DB, you're a ding-dong. DB, you can't do this. See, but I know you're for me, and ultimately you're going to help me. So you can say anything you want to me, and I'm going to receive it in a way. And this is the practical application of it. I know where your heart is coming from, so I receive it differently. That's all he's trying to say. And he even took the time, B-Mac, to explain it to the media and the fan base, and he shouldn't have to. But because he believes in the greater good and the edification of people, just being better people, he goes through it. So he bears his soul for everybody to see. When it would have been easy to BCD, just blame, complain, deflect. He didn't. Don't ever discount that. And the minute we want to cry and complain and moan and, oh, I'm out on rule and fire this guy and that guy, roll that press conference back. If you can't be motivated by somebody that is for you in terms of being a better person, and you don't get what he just said, this isn't for you. There's 129 other teams to go cheer for, 30 or whatever. I don't even know the number. But I'm telling you, B-Back, he's incredible. He's incredible. And that's off the cuff. That's not manufactured. He didn't write that speech down. You just had your guts ripped out. And he still says in the moment, under duress, how can I make other people around me better? It's the egg theory to a T. Whatever's in me, when I get squeezed, is what I'm made of. And we saw just right now, we heard just right now what he's made of. I'm riding with that guy. And I'm glad my son is with him. I'm glad he's at my alma mater. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to try to flourish and get from the doldrums of conference play and the bowl game and all this other stuff with Coach Rule. I'm riding with him, B-Mac.
DB, you sounded a little emotional there. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
What brought that? I mean, I imagine part of it is having your son play for a guy like that. I imagine that's a big part of it, and having your son play for a guy that I would imagine, just from our conversations, you fully trust with his future.
Yeah. It's a couple things. I'll try to be quick. Number one, you have to have, when you're trying to be led, you have to have somebody that you trust that can bear part of the burden for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't want to have to take it on all by yourself. Coach Rule is kind of that guy. there's this part of me that can wholeheartedly relate. We don't remember because we just talk about championships, but we had very similar sentiments from a leadership capacity where, people wanted to run Coach McBride out of town and they wanted to run Coach Osborne out of town, and Nebraska wasn't good at this and they couldn't do that. And we couldn't play on grass and 9 wasn't good enough. And we hung in there long enough from a leadership standpoint to see that it boiled down to like just believing, just wanting the best for other people. And the son portion of it, I mean, did you see Ryan Terry?
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Terry said the same thing on social media. Mm-hmm. And when you hear people in positions of leadership being trusted with people that you care about, those are the kinds of things that you want. And he had to, I went back and because I can't see because they're piping it through the deal. So I'm just listening to it with B. And I didn't see the pause because he knew whatever it was that he was getting ready to say, he was going to be opening himself up to
criticism, ridicule, accountability, even like whatever.
Why should he have to preface something by saying, hey, man, this is coming from a place of love and peace. I'm not being confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
He ate it, even though he could have taken a much different tone, right? But he does want people to be better, and there are like educational moments, and this is knowing full well that he's flawed too. So that was just one of those things that I think real time, like it's what you tell students. It's what you tell players that you're coaching. He went into kind of this father protect mode. And I like that in people because I think that has long-term staying power. I don't love Bill because he's super successful at business. I love Bill because I think when I was at my worst, he was at his best, right? So he's always
helped you bear that burden.
He's always going to get the benefit of the doubt, right? It's like when T.O. ate it, the see through the BS T-shirts, and it's not to say that he was without fault, but he absorbed it, and we had to have these team meetings where we said, "Hey, we need to do our part." When a player says you want to know how much, show me how much you care about your coach. Go out and represent them. Go out and represent them to the fullest. And if you want Nebraska to turn the corner, you better start to develop that mindset, because the greatest honor that I think somebody can receive in a position of leadership is you embody the things that I'm talking about.
And we hear it. We hear it from guys a lot.
And when you go out and you respond and you take the L and you take it with pride, you go back and you listen to MJ Sherman, off malign MJ Sherman, who went from, man, he's playing the best football of his life the last 3 weeks. Oh, man, this guy isn't very good.
And then he might have the best game of his career.
And then he bounced back.
Yeah, on Saturday.
So the more consistent you are with your mindset, the less EKG you'll be.
Yeah.
I had this conversation at the dinner table yesterday with Micah about low ceiling, high floor guys. They're the worst to coach. They are the worst to coach. And this was getting Fields and Westbrook, and he was asking me about players I'd rather have at the high school level. And I think he saw the trend, right? Like, I'll take this guy over that guy, because what we coached with and against a lot of players, and he was just giving me the playoff breakdown. I said, man, that's a low floor guy. Low floor, high ceiling people, I struggle with, because
you know what you're getting.
Yeah, and I think, those are people that talk a lot about being happy, because being happy is based on what's happening.
It's fickle.
Those people don't have joy, right? So those people they're hard to coach, and they're hard to be around.
I'll say they're hard to deal with.
They're really, really, really hard to be around.
Yeah.
You were asking me about social media on Saturday. Just a couple, just tidbits that I do, and following me is an option, right? It is, and
there's a button right there on the page.
And I can appreciate it, but just the negative, just like the picking apart and the negativity of something simple. I'm like, Go back and listen to that. I say this in peace and in love, right? Like, misery is optional. And you can be like my guy, Blake.
Mm-hmm.
Blake is very quick to point out some things that he would like to see different,
mm-hmm.
but he builds it on what some of the successes have been too. And so we can have this conversation about how to move this thing forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it just teaches accountability, because you have to own it. He could have started that whole thing with officiating.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, man, instead of, I'm going to say this at the fear of, I'm not trying to legislate behavior, but just imagine, as opposed to, if we just stop, like, tearing one another down and the sarcasm and the snarkiness when people are trying their best, that if we just had this unified kind of temporarily front, and we moved against the league, right? Or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the infighting, who should draw the ire? This is the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even want to do that. I'm just saying, if you have to pick
a battle,
pick it against those that aren't for you.
Mm-hmm. Because that guy clearly is.
Not with people that are with you.
Because that guy clearly is.
Right? Do you know how different some of the play calling and outcomes could be if calls are different?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not popular to complain and deflect that. It's easier just to pick at our own. And I'm like, two things can be true at once. Just channel the negativity towards where it's deserved.
Coming up next, we're going to talk some national college football with Ryan Roberts from A to Z Sports. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Ewers a shotgun snap, looking to throw, sends it up deep. He has more open. DeAndre caught. Touchdown, Texas. DeAndre Moore got a step on Dante Carter and holds it in for a 27-yard touchdown catch.
Leonard hands it off to Love. Up the middle, has a seam across midfield. Goodbye. Across the 40, 30, 20, 10. Touchdown. 64 yards of all love. Jeremiah's back in the end zone, and Notre Dame leads 20-7.
Quick snap, pump fake on the screen. Want to go down deep. He's got low. Did he make the grab? He did. Justice Lowe reaches back, grabs that ball, rolls in. Touchdown, Oregon.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Ryan Roberts. He's a college football analyst for A to Z Sports. Ryan, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
Just trying to recover. There's a lot going on in college football. I want to jump over to how so far in a topsy-turvy college football world, right? The multiple losses by some teams and power conferences, etc. How do you parse through just winning versus how you look while you're trying to win, when you're kind of ranking college football?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, it really is. I think first and foremost, winning is the natural thing that matters most, obviously, right? But I think that when you're really talking about just these, it's honestly like a little bit of trial by error, to be honest, this year, because it's just not the same college football that we've ever been used to, with the 12-team playoff and trying to figure out, seeding within conferences. And obviously, with the bigger conferences now with the Big Ten and SEC, like there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of things that go into these conversations ultimately, right? And I for one, am always just been, I am a eye test guy, and I always have been. I'm kind of a film-based guy when it comes to the NFL draft, college football analysis just in general. So for me, the latter always matters more, right? Like, yes, winning matters most, but ultimately, if you are not winning in a manner that shows me that you are one of the premier in college football, I mean, that matters obviously in those biggest moments, because you're trying to project forward ultimately, right? Because the end game is we're trying to get to the 12-team playoff. We're trying to see how these teams are going to be seeded. We're trying to see how this topsy-turvy world is going to look in year one. And I really think that we need to kind of project forward a little bit. So I think it really does matter a lot what these teams look like in these biggest games. But we have seen this year, obviously, it's nobody has the perfect answer, man. I've seen all these people out there, in the analytics community with, their formulas they have and different, ways that they rank opponents, production, all these types of things. And I just don't think anybody has the perfect answer, because this is a college football landscape that we are just beginning to know now with the 12-team playoff, and obviously with the conference realignment continuing to be a conversation.
All right, let me start with a perfect example of kind of what you just said is LSU and Texas A&M. That game changed on a dime. Nussmeier, who was starting to kind of get that buzz as a QB1 and, his anticipation, etc., He has the bad throw late over the middle. A&M gets the pick. It spirals. The game turns, in essence, on a dime. And that game is over. And I still am not sure what I think about either team compared to the other, right? Like, and I'm being like, until that pick, I was like, well, how's A&M going to slow LSU down here? Like, he's getting everything he wants. Then he throws the pick, and it's like, oh, well, that was over in a hurry. Like, it was incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I was actually having a text conversation with some people during that game, and my buddy, when they pulled Connor Wakeman to go to Marcel Reed, my buddy kind of said, like, there's no chance, and this is a person's opinion that I respect highly, was like, there's no chance that A&M's going to win this game. Like, they're just going to be a one-dimensional team. They're going to run the football a ton, and then all of a sudden, it's like LSU and Blake Baker. They don't have an answer for a run-heavy quarterback, for a guy that has the true dual threat ability. So it's a fascinating world. I mean, when you're talking about the Texas A&M and LSU specifically, like, I feel when we were trying to really understand these teams, I think it's important to start from the top down. And what I mean by that is, like, with the head coaches in place and the coaching staff in place, I think that those need to be a big part of this conversation, because in a college football world that is so much more about parity now with the transfer portal, NIL, it's really kind of evened the playing field a lot of cases. I really think that you need to start from the top down, because in these games, like, coaching is going to matter so much in determining football games. I feel like in a lot of years it was like Georgia 2021, like, they were going to roll most teams because they were just more talented than just about everybody they played on a game-to-game basis. I think in this more even playing field that it's really going to matter. The separation is going to be those coaching and those big moments of decision-making. So when you kind of look at those types of things, I mean, like, not to pick on Brian Kelly, because I do have a little bit of Notre Dame fandom in me, but, like, he has a propensity and he has a history of kind of falling short in some of these bigger games, obviously. You know, when Penn State plays Ohio State here very soon, I've been digging, obviously, in like that matchup, and it's like, James Franklin in his Penn State career has gone 3-18 against top 10 teams, and 1-6 at home in his career at home against top 10 teams. So I think that the top-down conversation matters more now in college football than it ever did, because the even playing field, I think that coaching is going to be the big differentiator in most weeks. Not all weeks, but in most weeks.
Ryan, we brought up a couple guys there, and I'm going to take a little bit advantage of your NFL draft expertise here for a second while talking about some of these guys. DB brought up Garrett Nussmeier. You brought up Connor Wegman. These are guys that have been talked about in the kind of NFL draft leading up to the season, especially Wegman kind of as a potential first-round guy. I think that's been put to bed. But, like, I don't know how else to ask this. How bad is this quarterback draft class?
It's pretty bad. It's not quite as bad as the Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett class. Like, it's not as bad as what we saw in 2022, but it's not a ton better. I mean, it is. I actually, it's funny enough, though, I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day, and, like, I actually think I like the class more now than I did in the preseason.
Really?
In the preseason, oh, yeah, man, I hated every single part of this class in the preseason.
Well, I could see that with a couple of guys in particular, like Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. They may actually be better than we thought going in, because you could make some cases to the contrary, but I could see where maybe
like
a couple of guys have turned the corner with some doubt. I'm kind of vibing with that, Ryan.
Well, in the preseason, I remember we were doing a ranking show, and I'm just like, I think it's Carson Beck by default right now, and, like, I didn't like it, I'm just like, there's no other guy that I mean, like, Shedeur Sanders was a guy that I was very hot and cold on. I think that he's been a ton better this year for Colorado, so he's taking a step forward.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cameron Ward, who's been obviously the biggest sender in this class. I would even throw, even though he's had a couple muddy weeks, like, the NFL does like Jalen Milroe, so I still think that he's a guy that at least needs to be in the conversation of quarterbacks. But, we've seen Connor Wegman. Like, Connor Wegman was a perfect example. No sample size. I think he had started like 8 football games before this year, or played in 9 football games. I mean, not even started 9 football games, but he played in a very small sample size coming into the year. But people, this is what we do in the draft space, right? Every single year. And I think this is what we're seeing with the Garrett Nussmeier stuff over the last couple weeks. People are trying to find hope so bad. And sometimes, unfortunately, hope is not there. I need to break it to people, but sometimes it's not, man. And Connor Wegman was a dart throw at a guy that has some traits, but we have no sample size on. Obviously, I mean, I don't even know what his future holds, because mean, A&M's just a better offense, it seems, mostly when Marcel Reed's the quarterback. So, like, maybe he's a transfer portal kid eventually. I don't know. Like, that's pure speculation on my part. But it's a quarterback class that right now I would say Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders are the conversation at QB1. After that, it's going to be who do you buy into more? Jalen Milroe, Drew Aller from Penn State is a guy that's going to have some fans. After that, I mean, it's Quinn Ewers has been a trend down guy. Connor Wakeman's a back-to-school guy. I mean, I could even see Jalen Milroe be a back-to-school guy potentially, even though I think the NFL does like him a decent amount. So it's not a great quarterback class, but it's still better than, like, the Kenny Pickett class, because that was a class where just, like, there were – outside of Malik Willis, there was no guy with, like, athletic traits that you got really excited about. You know, just kind of in a vacuum. You were just hoping that Kenny Pickett could be a high-floor guy, even though he ended up not being that at all. So I like this class better than that one, but it is definitely a class that is not good and that people are trying to find hope. And I think that's what we've seen with Nussmeier recently as well.
Ryan, I want to talk about Carson Beck real quick. Could you talk yourself into obviously he's, you know, had some interception issues and struggled a little bit more this year, but can you talk yourself into the way he kind of comes back from those situations? Like, had a really bad first half against Alabama, ends up coming back and playing really well. Like, is that something that appeals to you or you think appeals to NFL scouts at all?
I mean, it does. Yeah. I think how quarterbacks come back from adversity and how quarterbacks come back from, you know, just kind of the mental side of the game from a week-to-week perspective, especially playing in the SEC. Like, that stuff matters. Like, you know, being a resolute person, like having resolve, like, it matters a ton. So I think that stuff does help him a bit. I think that he also does bring the kind of baseline stuff. You know, he's 6'4", 108. He's 220 pounds. He's got the bigger frame. He's got a pretty strong arm. He's played a decent amount of football now as a 2-year starter. So all those things will help him. I just think that, again, in the preseason, because I remember seeing like some spring grades from some NFL teams, you know, from scouting resources that I have. And I mean, there was mostly second-round grades on Carson Beck. So even a guy that we were kind of valuing as a potential top 10 guy, like the NFL viewed him more as like a second-round, like day 2 type of football player. And I think that's honestly where he's going to go. I don't see him being a first-round pick in this class. I see him being more of a second-round player. But I think people will like the floor a lot. I just think the problem with Carson Beck is that there's just not a ton of a ceiling, man. Like, he's just kind of statuesque. He doesn't move off his spot very much. He's not a guy that's really going to elevate around him. He's kind of one of these quarterbacks that we kind of give the cliche to, like game managers, guys that in the right situation with talent around him, he can do enough to keep you afloat. He can be good in the great situation, but he's not necessarily an elevator.
Interesting. Let me go to – so for – I don't know, 4 out of the past 6 weeks, I would always ask this question. Of the then one-loss teams and up until this weekend, it had some merit. I would ask for folks to parse through some of the early loss teams, A&M, Notre Dame, Clemson. I'm one of those guys that had said all along, I like Notre Dame just because I thought their defense was the most portable of all the questions that they had about those teams. It appears that Notre Dame is still really good in spite of Northern Illinois, because I liked Navy. They ruined ruined Navy.
Well, I was actually at the game this weekend because they play right here in Jersey. I'm a Jersey guy, so they're at MetLife. I think that here's the tough part about Notre Dame, and because I think you're right. I think they are a much better team than people thought they were, and I think they are still trending in a great direction. Notre Dame, for whatever reason, I think it starts from the top down, they kind of play up to teams a lot, and they play down to some teams they shouldn't. Now, they've done better the last few weeks of not playing down as much. Like you said, they killed Navy, and they've played a lot of games now where they have, you know, been the most deciding team and have been the team that was easily the better football team on the field every Saturday for the most part. So I think that they're trending in a good direction. I had someone on like a message board that I saw that was like asking me a question that was like, hey, man, could the Northern Illinois game have been a real blessing to Notre Dame? I'm like, guys, please let's stop with that. Like, no, losing to Northern Illinois is never a good thing. Let's not try to take this, right? It was a awful loss. Now, I will give them credit because Notre Dame's been dealing with so many injuries, man. They're down Benjamin Morrison at cornerback.
Yeah.
They've been down 3 of their top offensive linemen. They got 1 back this week, which was good. They've been down their 2 best pass rushers, Abubakar Traore and Joshua Burnham. Like, they've been down so many guys this year. But to their credit, Marcus Freeman and this staff, since he got here in 2021 as the defensive coordinator and obviously transitioned to head coach, they have recruited at a whole other level than I can remember at Notre Dame from a top-down perspective. Not only just getting some of the top names in the class, but also finding depth in the class, but not depth as in, oh, like, I was just a placeholder. We took him because he's a local kid or what. Like, they're finding talented depth, which I think is more than anything showing that even when a guy gets hurt, they can kind of plug guys away a little bit. So they have a very easy stretch here. They have the bye week, and they have Florida State, and then you obviously have Army, you have Virginia, you have USC. Like, that is not a daunting schedule at all. So Notre Dame going 11-1 is always going to make the 12-team playoff, I think, like, unless it's just a year where they have no strength of schedule at all. But overall, I think Notre Dame is trending in the right direction. And this is truly a year. I mean, like, we just saw it last year to a degree, even though it wasn't a 12-team playoff. Michigan was the best, most well-built team probably last year. Mm-hmm. And they were able to take advantage of momentum in the right time, ultimately, right? And they rode that to a championship. This is a wide-open field. Like, you can talk me into Oregon winning it. You can talk me into Ohio State having a little bit of a comeback here. You can talk me into Georgia. Like, there's a few teams that you could tell me are going to win a national championship this season, and I would believe you. I don't necessarily think Notre Dame is going to win a national championship, but if Notre Dame ended up winning one or two playoff games because they just kind of got hot at the right time and were at least right down the stretch, I could buy it because they have, like you. I don't think you guys have enough time for me today to talk to you about what Al Golden has meant to this defense last couple years. Like, just incredible what he has done, and they are a team that is going to play with anybody. Like, if Notre Dame played with Georgia, Ohio State, anybody in the playoff, I wouldn't necessarily predict them to win, but I would always say that it's going to be a close game. We have seen that now with Marcus Freeman against the best teams on the schedule. This team does play up, and they are going to give any team a tough out, in my opinion, in the playoffs if they make it there.
Yeah, a couple guys from Omaha on that roster that travel in that 2-3 deep. One of them, Xavier Watts. So I'm well aware. Golden is a guy that they sing his praises, so I'm with you there. But it's interesting because as I transition, because you mentioned Aller, and we'll see what his health is like as they welcome in Ohio State. My eyes tell me if Notre Dame played Penn State, Notre Dame would beat Penn State. Yet Penn State is right there in the thick of things. What's the difference when you look at, let's say, a Notre Dame to a Penn State to even a Texas, who maybe you just kind of left out, or you don't like in that same discussion after what Georgia did to them, and you did use Georgia. What's the difference there between a Notre Dame, a Penn State, a Texas?
There's not much. That's why I think the differentiator is ultimately going to be coaching. You know, who's the best coach in that day? Like, I spoke about it because I actually did like the deep research on Penn State a couple weeks ago with Franklin because there was actually a college football playoff projection that had Notre Dame playing Penn State in the first round. It was like a 9 versus 10 or an 8 versus 9. I forget which one it was. Mm. But it comes down to, like, for me, this weekend, you know, when Penn State plays against Ohio State, I'm picking Ohio State because I don't trust James Franklin in those big time moments. So, like, there isn't separation, to your point. There's not. Like, you could convince me on any given day Notre Dame would beat Penn State or Penn State would beat Notre Dame. You convince me on most days that Texas could go back and forth with either one of those teams or even a couple others that you've got to throw at the table. This is going to be a chaotic end to the college football season because ultimately this is the most even playing field we have ever seen. And I think that we owe that not only to the 12 team and NIL and transfer portal, also with what the movement that we're seeing in conferences. It is not as easy to get to a conference championship game now. It just isn't. Yeah. It isn't as easy to do that. It isn't easy to make the playoffs. I mean, we're going to see, you know, I mean, obviously in the SEC, we're going to see a one-loss team at best, you know, win the championship. Maybe they're a two-loss team. Who knows with the automatic qualifier of the conference championship. So it is really kind of really stressed a longer season. And ultimately, I think teams are not packing it in as quick as maybe they would in the past after they get one or two losses, because now they know that if I win a conference championship game, I still get a chance here, right? Like ultimately. So it's going to be chaos down the stretch. There's no doubt about it. And this is the most even playing field I think that we have seen in college football in a very long time.
Ryan, I'm just going to kind of gloss over the disrespect you threw at Jeff Monken and my guy while you were talking about the Notre Dame schedule.
I like
oh, this guy is the biggest Monken honk ever. So I apologize in advance, Ryan.
I'm honking for Monken. No, so Ryan, I wanted to get to the Oregon-Illinois game here because I, as I'm watching that, you know, obviously we see the Oregon-Ohio State game before that. I'm kind of comparing it to how Illinois played against Penn State. Could I make the argument that the way that Oregon handled Illinois was as impressive just in terms of how they played as the victory over Ohio State was?
I mean, you can to a degree, yeah, because I think when you're coming off a win like Ohio State, it's very easy to let your guard down and not remain focused. And honestly, like Coach Dan Lanning got his biggest win so far, beating Ohio State a couple weeks ago. But one thing is he's a young coach, and you do have those little impulsive things in the back of your mind saying, okay, great win. Can you keep them focused, right? Like with a Nick Saban or somebody like that who has that type of reputation, I don't worry about that because of his age, his experience, and just generally what we had seen from a resume perspective. With someone like that, you know, with the age that he is and how inexperienced he still is as a head coach, I did worry about that. And Illinois I think Illinois was slightly overrated, but like they have had a good record. They've been taking care of business for the most part. Like they have looked like a good football team, and they were a good football team. So ultimately, being able to beat them, and not just beat them, but beat them handedly the way that you just did, I think that speaks volumes to what Coach Lanning is building. Because honestly, I came into the year where I kind of deem this as like a real test year for Dan Lanning, right? Like on paper, you have so much talent. You have done so well in high school recruiting. You did great in the transfer portal acquisitions this past year and over the course of your career so far. But this is the year that when you looked at his top 25, top 20 wins coming into the season, it's not the most impressive list of all time, and he hadn't done it really out of the conference. And although Ohio State is now in his conference, so it's not an out-of-conference win, it is still a different opponent than what we had seen him win in a top 25 matchup. So being able to do that and then come back and remain focused and dominating the way that he has dominated, I think that is showing that this Oregon team is really trending in an incredible direction, and I have gained – I wish I had respect for Coach Lanning, but I have gained a lot more respect for his coaching acumen this year because he is showing me that he knows how to build a really good football team.
All right, this may at first blush, this may seem like, gosh, why'd you lump these three teams together, especially if you factor in trajectory. But of recent blue bloods, and you had to take the job as is tomorrow going forward, would you rather be Oklahoma, Michigan, or Nebraska?
Oh, that's a tough one, man. That's oh man. I'll still go Oklahoma, even though I don't love where the roster is right now, because I think they still have a lot of great resources behind them. The other one I would say is Nebraska. I think Michigan's a really tough job right now.
So, obviously, my partner tried to make that case a couple of months ago, and I looked at him like he was crazy.
Michigan's a hard job. Michigan's a hard job.
I looked at him like he was nuts.
Yeah. The difference between Stanford and Michigan is not that big. In terms of the some of the challenges that they deal with. I don't know that people appreciate some of the challenges Michigan deals with. I really don't.
Yeah, no, it's a very difficult job for a lot of different factors. I mean, one, you just won a national championship, so everyone's hyper-focused on you, right? The other thing is that you're following Jim Harbaugh, and I guess in this hypothetical, we'd be following Sherrone Moore, and we wouldn't be following Jim Harbaugh. But regardless, what Jim Harbaugh was able to create there is, I mean, it speaks volumes. And the fact of what he was able to do based upon his kind of, he had some success early, and then he kind of hit a little bit of a lull there around the COVID year and that type of stuff. And a lot of people were a little bit down on Jim Harbaugh, and his ability to recover and build the roster that he did was tremendous. And I think the ultimate thing, though, is that the eyeballs are on you, both from you won a championship and now you have a target on your back, but also the legality side of things, right? With the Connor Stallion stuff, that's not an easy thing to kind of get around. And then also love Jim Harbaugh, think he's a great coach, but he didn't leave the roster in a great spot. He really did it, man. He did not recruit high school at the highest of levels over the last few years, so the roster isn't as great as possibly what it could have been. But I think that's a long hold rebuild for Coach Moore kind of moving forward here. I think that you kind of just really need to almost bring it down to the bare bones here for a second and try to rebuild back, because I just don't think – I thought that going into the year maybe there was a little bit of we already have the foundation built and we're going to kind of replicate what it was, but I'm not sure it's going to quite be able to be that seamless or that close to the best. So I think that they need to kind of do a little bit of rebuild, when I look at Nebraska, I think they're rolling great, and they have a lot of backing, and obviously, financially it's not an issue, and they have their history, so I think that's a good job. But Oklahoma, I think, is just a little bit of a different animal. Like, I'm down on Brett Venables. I was never really a huge Brett Venables fan, and I think that this is going to be a little bit of a there's going to be a little bit of a transition here, man, obviously with the SEC in their first year. But I do still think that Oklahoma is a cool program, right, where players are going to want to come play for Oklahoma with the tradition they have. They have a lot of money behind them. I do think that you can flip that roster relatively quick. So they would ultimately be my answer, even though I don't love where they are right now, because I do think that they financially and just from a support perspective, they have a lot of people behind Oklahoma that will help them flip quickly if they make the right decision. So I think that is a job that could be salvaged pretty quickly if the right people are behind it.
Ryan, we appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Ryan.
That's Ryan Roberts from A to Z Sports. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Ryan Stonehouse, excellent punter. Raymond from the 10-yard line. Raymond has one terrific return already today. Looking for a second. Raymond up the sideline, across the 30. Khalif Raymond, goodbye.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
That guy's pretty good at his job, isn't he?
KFOR in Lincoln? Who?
Kugler.
Yeah, he's fine.
He's incredible.
No, he's really, really good. That's we appreciate you being here with us on a Monday. It's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, best place in Nebraska. Place your sports bets, whether it's in Omaha or Lincoln. Make sure you get out to the casinos, and you can place bets on nearly every major sporting event. Get to warhorsecasino.com for a full list of details and house rules. There's something I want to bet on here today, DB.
What's up?
Philosophically, I'd like to bet on something.
Oh, boy.
We were talking to our guys.
Do you want me to sit up?
I mean, it's up to you.
My back is sore. Let me see what's going on. All right, go.
Kind of sound like you were going to do it. Let me clear my throat.
No.
DJ Cool.
Yeah. Which, by the way, will be the cool thing about having a home game now, because we get Coatney in the booth.
Yeah.
And he gets my musical references. He at least laughs. Sharp looks at me like he's crazy. He's like, I'm going to get this youngster some more milk so he can go to bed. I'm going to get better, Sharpie, I promise.
Does he give you a calculator during the game?
No,
you're doing all that adding.
Listen, that's B-Mac. So I love it. So this is why, again, another reason why I vibe with Coach Rule. He's like that family, the other center guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jess is my eyes and ears. Like, she is in the nitty gritty, getting yelled at, fans talking.
So she's down on the field, right?
Fans talking crazy to her. She like gets the vibe, so she can say she's good. Like, she lets me know. Like, sometimes I'll say something and I'm totally getting it from Jess
because she's talking to you in ear, even when she's not on the air.
And
right?
I can hear what she's like, what's being said sometimes. I mean, like, she's in it. B-Mac is like my thermometer. He can kind of give me a look, and I can either chill and he's very creative with, he can write fast and he's very good at pointing numbers. He has what looks like a bingo chart, and it's all numbers.
Yeah.
And he can point, and I know what he's talking about, like yards on the punt, or he's just really, really, he's good. And then Sharpie is like, he's the regulator.
Yeah.
Not like Warren G, but he's just, it's just cool how it goes together. And I hope everybody listens to the radio broadcast, but it's primarily because just the chemistry.
Well, and it's dramatically better than the TV broadcast.
It's
we don't get Kevin Kugler on our games.
We just totally play to each other. It's just I like it.
But there's something I want to bet on philosophically that Sam brought up, that, and I kind of gave a funny face. I forget we're on camera sometimes.
Yeah, that took me back. But I was go ahead.
So he's talking about, how he wasn't, like, in the moment, wasn't necessarily vibing with Coach Rule's like opener to the press conference, and how he's like, hey, the philosophical stuff's great, but like, how's that going to help Nebraska on a play-to-play basis? How's that going to help Nebraska on a week-to-week basis? How's it going to help on the football stuff? And here's what I'm betting on, right? Is that emotional regulation that Coach Rule's talking about, because that's a big chunk of what he's talking about. You can use whatever words you want, but that's a lot of, like, being emotionally regulated is one of the big things he was talking about. What I'm betting on is that's about the only thing that matters from play to play and week to week. Because how many times have we said, DB, not a talent issue?
Yeah, I'm still on that.
Against Ohio State, maybe it's a talent issue, right?
But that wasn't the difference in the game.
It wasn't. No. It really, really wasn't. That's the funny thing, is even when the other team is more talented, give me the emotional regulation.
Yeah.
Right? Give me the ability to stay in the moment. Give me the ability to play that guy's strengths versus focusing on his weaknesses. Give me all those things on a play-to-play and a week-to-week and a year-to-year basis, and I will bet that gets me more wins.
Yeah.
Than everything
Ohio
else.
State has better talent than Indiana.
Ohio State has better talent than almost everybody. I mean, if we're being honest, right?
It's just vastly different games.
Like, it's Ohio State, Georgia, and Bama. That's it. Like, that's the
Texas.
Texas, excuse me, 4. There are 4 teams that are the cream of the crop talent-wise, and everybody else is chasing them. Guess what? Vanderbilt isn't even the same. Right? So,
although T-Mac said relax, I think I said beat their head in.
You did the first time.
And he was like, yeah, relax with that.
Yeah, no, they beat their head in. Sorry, T-Mac. I don't know what to tell you.
I was like,
I'm not saying it would happen again in a playoff. I don't know, but like in the one we saw, they beat their head in.
So that's the kind of thing that in a rematch could be worse for Texas.
Yeah.
Because Texas is their warts at the inability to overcome some shaky stuff at QB would be pronounced. And Beck has a little bit better snapback to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like
that's the one thing I like about Beck a lot.
A little bit of the rubber band man. Too.
I like the fact that he could throw 3 picks and a half, doesn't phase him.
And I'm still not sure Texas could block Georgia up front.
I don't think so. But that's what I'm betting on is that all of that stuff that Coach Rule was talking about, that's the only way from play to play you're going to get consistency. From week to week, you're going to get consistency. That is the only thing because talent won't get you there. Coaching won't get you there. If it's just about X's and O's and football stuff, like emotionally, you have to be so good.
Shane, do you have, I don't know if I didn't blow up the screen deal. You have MJ Sherman's comments?
I do. Let me get it here.
With regards to what Sam said. Because when he said that and you go.
I made a face.
No, when he said, well, I'm not sure that helps you.
I think it might be the only thing that does.
Play to play.
Yeah.
I have it.
Listen to this response from MJ Sherman.
What else can I say? We're not out of this. We're definitely not out of this. We still fighters. We're a team that will always play about back to the wall, and we always try to fight, always try to fight, always try to fight. So I expect when Monday roll around, we have our come to truth meeting. We see the X's and O's that was wrong, that was correct. You learn from it, grow from it. Rolling's a bloody Tuesday hitting. So I expect us in November to be the team who we are today, but even better.
Isn't that what you're saying?
Yeah, 100%.
That's exactly what you're saying.
100%.
It's a mindset.
Yes. That is the difference in almost between a bad team and a good team and a great team, and a great team and a championship team.
And he drives me, full disclosure, he drives me crazy sometimes because
MJ?
he's such like a quote machine. It's almost too it's hard
to buy it all the time.
Rhythmic.
Yeah.
But that's also part of the reason he's able to bounce back and endure, whether it's last year or this year where we're like, oh man, did we miss on MJ? And then he comes out like gangbusters. It's like,
philosophically,
that's the Georgia recruit we thought we were getting. And then there was this little stretch early on where he's playing really well, some of the best ball of his life, and then he wasn't playing well. And so it is the consistency in his delivery and his mindset that's allowed him to bounce back once again. Who was held twice? He got held one. I'm okay.
You're gonna be all right.
Yeah, it just. I'm telling you, man. I hearken back to, I think I said during the broadcast, and I was ashamed to say it. I was, but it came out anyway. And I hate when people say it in sports. I said, gosh, it comes across as unfair.
Yeah.
And I feel like a gump using that in
it does.
competitiveness. Because listen, I've had my teeth kicked in before, right? And at no point did I say
this is
unfair.
Yeah.
Right. But there just was so much to overcome because sequentially it snowballed into big things. Not all bad calls or missed calls are created equal.
Mm-hmm. No, there's different leverage points.
When you get points off of or you don't get
taken
points
off the board,
it's different. And I was like, man, this is giving me 93 FSU vibes. But I wasn't allowed. We weren't allowed to complain about it.
Yeah. Is it weird to me that the spots bothered me more than the penalties?
Well, they were crucial.
Right.
I mean,
the one at the end of the half was egregious.
You're talking about.
I'm not sure I've ever seen somebody miss a spot by that much.
Yeah.
He missed it by 3 yards.
Yeah.
Like he missed it by 3 yards.
Even real time. Sharp goes, that's 2 yards. And I go, was it?
He was a minimum of 1.5 yards past the line, and they marked him a full yard short.
Yeah.
It is a minimum of a 2.5 yard
And
miss.
the clock ticks. And
yeah. And then you're just in this whole other place. But like, to my point here, this is
I wonder what happens if you bag the timeout, you get the first down, and it's first down from the 38 with what should have been like a minute one.
Yeah. So you at least have a shot at 6 instead of 3.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't. Maybe they don't get it. Doesn't matter. But at least give yourself a shot.
It did give us something to be excited about, a 54-yard field
That's
goal.
right.
So you're gambling on the fact that
I'm betting on it
that press conference will hit home.
Yeah, I mean, this straight quote from Matt Rule here. The football will get better. The football will continue to get better. But make no mistake, the hardest thing is building a culture of championship caliber expectations without winning.
Yeah. That's been his greatest hurdle.
It has been. And that, to me, is what I'm betting on actually matters and will actually show up on the football field on a week-to-week basis. That's CB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll wrap up the show coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
But like, I'm just trying to like lay it out there for people who love coaching and love kids. Do you know how hard it is to like come up here every week and talk about what went wrong without ever making a kid look bad? Like, I listen to coaches all the time talk about we got to execute. That means your players aren't very good. When coaches say we just got to execute better, they're throwing it on the kids. And just, we stand up here and we try so hard to give everyone a true picture. Because one thing I love about Nebraska fans is they love football. They want to know the hows, the whats, the whys. And I listen to the people I trust. Like I called Coach Osborne on Sunday. I said, Coach, got 5 minutes for me? What do you think? Coach Osborne and Coach Solis came to practice on Tuesday. Coach, And the old things are the real things, are the good things. And so I'm only saying this now because I want our players, if they just listen to this press conference, to know how truly, truly, truly excited I was to be in that locker room with them. I didn't have to be a cheerleader today. I didn't have to be like, come on, you can do this. Like, they were like, get out of the way. And we've had moments like that. That was 60 minutes of that today.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. What's up?
That's what you should have led with in response to if you didn't like what Sammy Mack said.
Yeah.
Because that's the antithesis.
Yeah.
Right? Because your point was when you start thinking like that, you don't have to worry about the 60 minutes because then your players will get your back.
Yes, 100%.
And it's not always going to yield wins,
right?
But
more often than not, it will.
They'll get your back. And I forgot that he said that because I was so stinking emotional.
Yeah,
when he said that. But he said if you love coaching and you love kids, and I was like, that's exactly why I like it. What he said. Because it's also like parenting. It is.
That's why I got out of coaching.
It is exactly like parenting.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what I gravitate towards.
That's why I got out of coaching, because that wasn't what it was about for me. And I was like, this is not a good spot for me.
Yeah.
Like, that's also why I'm not a parent, right? That's not what I'm about.
Oh, I can appreciate that. Like, I can appreciate that.
Like, that's not what I'm about. The reason I coach is because I wanted people to know how smart I was. That's a bad reason to coach.
Yeah.
So I stopped. I got into scouting. I got into some other things where that mattered, right? Being smart and knowing what I'm looking at mattered. If you're dealing with kids on a day-to-day basis, that's a terrible reason to coach. And I realized that and I got out. Right? Like, it just is.
No, I know. You're not alone.
And so,
it's hard.
It is really hard. And man,
so you know who he you know what else I gravitated towards?
What's that?
He sounded a lot like Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
People talk about what players can't do. Like, that's a coaching issue.
That's the one thing that's one of the things
I was just like, oh man, I'm all in.
That's one of the things I love about Greg Popovich is he finds guys based on what they can do. That's why you see so many guys that ended up in San Antonio during his championship years. They're like, what is Danny Green doing? He's going to win. He almost won a finals MVP.
Yeah.
Like that. Nope. That dude got cut from everybody. Oh. Nobody wanted Danny Green. And then the Spurs are like, oh, he can do something. Look at what he can do. Not, oh, he's not good enough off the dribble and he can't really finish at the rim. They're like, oh, no, but he can lock people up and he can make corner threes. Dope. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Right? So that's part of it for me. The other thing is, I think the reason, like, we hear process over results all the time, right?
Well, I think sometimes, unfortunately, we pit one against the other.
Right.
When we want to make a case. That drives me up the wall.
Because you want both, right? You want the process to yield good results. Otherwise, it's a bad process, right? But as you're building that, it takes patience. But here's the other thing. The reason I think that's important is because not focusing on results helps you remove some of that emotion, right? If you're results oriented, it's really easy to get emotional because you're up and down based on how things go. You're up and down based on whether or not
that's my happiness versus
joy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Happiness is fleeting. Joy is a mindset. Right. That you can 100%. Sit there and go. And if you're results based, you're like, oh man, we got screwed. The guy spotted him 3 yards back. Or, oh man, there was 2 offensive pass interference calls that were nonsense, or our 5-star quarterback missed 2 touchdowns.
What I tell you, Caleb said why he thinks they're in good hands.
Why is that?
And it's not because he said he sounded like me. It was because he said he's a fighter. He said all he does is talk about fighting life, competing in life.
Just keep competing.
And he said that's just all football is. He said we just need to fight better.
And it's hard to keep fighting or to want to keep fighting if you're emotional because things aren't going your way. Yeah. That's why process, at least early, process over results is important. It helps remove emotion from the equation because it's really, really hard, as Coach Rule was saying, to build a good culture without winning, especially if you're results focused. Obviously, the results have to come at some point. That's the other part that we don't always talk about, or that people try and pit against process. The results have to come at some point. Like, Coach Rule can't win 5 games every year and stay at Nebraska forever. That just won't happen, right? That's not an option. And he knows that, right? He knows that. It's not like he's sitting here, he's like, man, if I do things the right way, they'll let me win 5 forever. He doesn't know. No one thinks that. But what he does understand is, hey, if I have to eat a couple 5-win seasons, and I don't think that's where this is going this year for the record, but if I have to eat a couple 5-win seasons, or if you want to go back to Baylor and Temple, so I have to eat a 1 or 2 win season in order to get this thing right, that's worth it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't hire him to win Saturday.
No. You hire him to win in 2026 and 2027.
And if you're getting the return on investment, then you beat UCLA.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's probably more of where this program is in year 1.5. Probably more accurate. Even though, don't you find it interesting that of all the talent discrepancies, and we need better, what did we hear against Indiana? Man, we need better players. We need better players.
Are Indiana players better than Ohio State's?
And at no point Saturday
did we hear that?
Did anyone talk about talent? Not during the game.
No. Now we nitpicked a little later.
I mean, Klatt lamented over Jeremiah Smith.
Right, and he's one of the best freshmen we've ever seen.
Yeah, but it wasn't his talent. His speed on that switch release
really hard to deal with.
Wasn't why he scored though.
No, it's because Nebraska miscommunicated.
Yeah,
that's it.
Now you could make the case. You want to be like,
if he's a little slower, it makes it easier to communicate.
Yeah,
right.
Then
it puts more pressure on you.
Yeah, then your play side safety can get over the top, and Giff can run underneath as a potential hole guy. But that concept, like the back and forth between those condensed sets, were incredible. Nebraska went one time, they stayed in 3, then they went to 2, then they went back to 3, and they found out they couldn't carry the wheel, so they checked back to 2, and then Ohio State got in a 2x2 condensed set. Nebraska had some success against it playing 3, which is 3 deep. But you typically don't like 3 against 2-bys.
Yeah.
I know Nebraska doesn't. So watch Giff pre-snap on the play to Jeremiah Smith. He went from inside, and he went from the outside receiver to the inside. I've talked about this with the low switch release. I think Nebraska wanted to play their version of 2. But with the pre-snap look, the run action has to hold Giff because he's a run fitter first. He had just a couple of series earlier made a play for like a 3-yard gain, just come smoking down in the box. Singleton did the same thing.
Bunch of times. They both did a bunch of times.
So it became a cat and mouse game. They're like, fudge.
If those guys are coming down,
Ohio State's probably thinking, these guys are going to come barreling down into the box.
So how do we counter that?
We're going to switch release. We're going to get back in condense.
We're going to fake run to bring them down in the box
and
then sneak right behind them.
Louisiana Bayou.
Because Jeremiah Smith is running like a 4-2.
That's really good.
It's a good chess match on both sides, right?
I like that because they went White won early. Chip won that one. Like just the back and forth. And then the scramble that Howard had on the 3rd down to get him to 1st and goal from the 6. He had 2 guys in the same run fit. He hadn't kept the ball almost all game.
Yeah.
So Nebraska you usually want 5 for dive. You want 5 on dive, right? Belly 2, I got Q. So outside run fitter has got to be thinking, he knows he's a quarterback player. He sees dive, it's 3rd and 6. You're trying to make a play. You get 2 guys in the same fit. Howard finally keeps it. He stumbles and bumbles down to the 6, and then it's like, damn. Right?
Yeah.
That's just cat and mouse type stuff. Like, those are the cool things that I like seeing that happen during the course of a game that aren't as immediate as, I mean, you don't get to the 2nd and 3rd screen passes of the game if they throw the speed out because Nebraska has a 1st down. Then they don't have to check out of it. And then people say, oh, the screen. And stop confusing screen game with quick game. If you want to say to me, well, I wish they had different check with me rules for quick game, then say
Which
that.
is what Joel said. Joel said that on Twitter.
Then say, oh, I missed it.
Yeah.
Say that. Don't stop just saying screens because it's a short pass. Like they're not all.
It's not the same thing.
It's not.
Because I told Joel, I go, hey, DB brought up about 2/3 of those are checkdowns.
Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
I don't even remember. I listen. I get so mad.
I know. But you're like, hey, about 2/3 of those are quarterback checks. Like that's not.
Was this when I landed?
No, this was on air.
Oh,
today.
Yeah. Shoot.
You go, about 2/3 of these are QB checks.
I have blackout moments.
I do too. Honestly, I do.
Because I want to know. Like I'm gonna ask instead of people just bitching and moaning.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask. Hey man, how many of these are check with me's? We used to do this thing in Nebraska. And I hated it.
Mm-hmm.
Ask, get Coach Osborne on. We used to go to this thing called Abdul. Everybody will know 91, 93, and 95, 97s. Running back would check out of the backfield, and he would become a wing.
Mm-hmm.
There were only 2 things we did out of it. Listen. God is my. Ask anybody that played.
Yeah,
I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. We're either running the speed outs or we're running the slants, and everybody knows. It's the only 2 things we did.
Yeah,
you saw Matt. The running back would come from the eye, be out of the 1 back or 2 back. Fullback would stay.
Mm-hmm.
Running back we would get in a 2-by. There's only 2 concepts we did,
mm-hmm.
and people hated that too. But as part of the check with me system, you have to kind of keep it simple.
Yeah,
right.
Because you have to get everybody on the same page in like 3 seconds, like live.
Yeah,
right. So it has to be a simple concept.
They're like, where are all the fake screen? It has to be a called play because if it's a check with me,
there's like 1 or 2 options.
It's quick game because you think you're getting pressure.
Yeah, which they were a lot.
Yeah. You don't,
right?
you don't have time for the smokes and goes.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will be back tomorrow. I'm sure we'll have more Nebraska as we hear from Coach Rule again today. We'll get into some NFL that we haven't gotten into yet. And, man, there's a World Series going on. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back tomorrow.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.